Good afternoon, everybody. It's 3 o'clock on November 20th, 2025, and I will call back to order the Austin City Council meeting. The next items we're going to take up are items 4, 5, and 6. In addition to the meeting that we're having today, where we're going to hear from the public on items 4, 5, and 6, we've had additional opportunities for the public to speak on the proposed amended budget. We had a work session Tuesday during which we heard from all speakers, and we had a meeting on Wednesday in which we included a public hearing where we heard from all speakers on the proposed amended budget, in addition to hearing from speakers on a specific budget agenda item. We also have meetings posted for tomorrow, which is the 21st, Monday the 24th, and Tuesday the 25th. However, for members of the public, I want to again emphasize that those meetings will only be held if the council does not get to the needed number of votes in favor of the proposed budget amendments beforehand, and needs to have those meetings for the required votes to pass the items that are on the agenda. If council gets to the needed votes before any of those meetings, we will be canceling those remaining meetings. Also, for today, if council can get to a vote on the amended budget by 10 p.m. tonight, we will reset. If we cannot get to a vote on the amended budget by 10 o'clock tonight, we will recess and we will continue the meeting to tomorrow. If that happens, we will cancel the separate meeting that's posted for tomorrow so that we don't end up having overlapping meetings. If it comes to that, in other words, if we don't have a vote by 10 o'clock tonight and we recess and come back tomorrow, if we do that, we won't have speakers tomorrow since we will have already had them for this meeting today. And that's just a continuation of the meeting. Therefore, if you signed up to speak today, I encourage you to do so rather than waiting for the other posted meetings in the next few days, as today may be the last guaranteed opportunity to speak on the budget and the tax rate amendment items that are before us today. Again, we're going to take up public comment on items 4, 5, and 6. We will do that in order, but we're going to take up the public comment before we go to a discussion by the council on the budget. So I'll now turn to the city clerk and ask you to please feel free to start calling people's names.
Thank you, Mayor. First speaker, Maria Unda, item 4. Maria, are you there? Patricia Nunez.
Yes, good afternoon, Mayor Watson and Austin City Council members. My name is Patricia Nunez, and I have been a bilingual public school teacher and advocate in the Austin area for nearly 30 years. I am here today to ask the city of Austin's continued support, financial support for Academia Cuautli, which is soon to return home to the newly renovated MAC. As a longtime collaborator with Academia, I can attest to the powerful learning space this program creates for our students and families. It is not a typical classroom environment. It is a community space where culture, language, and identity are honored as central to learning. For students, this is the space where they see their history, their home language, and their family knowledge treated as assets towards academic growth. One of the greatest strengths of Academia Cuautli is a deep level of parent involvement. Families are not only invited into the learning, but they are co-creators of it. Parents participate and share their knowledge through cultural activities and gain support with resource navigation for being residents of this city, this vibrant city. I also think that it's a space where parents walk alongside their children as partners in education, which strengthens familial relationships and offers a different experience from traditional school settings. So for many parents, Academia provides a welcoming space where their knowledge and experiences are valued and essential to the children's school success. the bilingual programming that
Thank you
Academia
very
offers
much.
in Spanish and English.
That's all the remote speakers we have in the queue, so I'm going to switch over to in person. For item 4, I have Bryden Summers, Janice Bookout, Aloki Shaw, Trey Salinas, Rich Heyman.
Please come down if your name's been called.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'm Bryden Summers, President of AFSCME Local 1624, the Union for City of Austin Employees. As I've told you throughout this week, we have 5 priorities. 1, no RIFs. 2, include the progressive COLA. So I want to thank the City Manager, the Budget Office, and Council for supporting these. We also want to include bad weather pay and the stipend for essential employees. So I want to thank Councilmember Velasquez for adding that back into the conversation. The 2 priorities that are left are actions. We want the city to evaluate where we can get more money for the rest of the city from the police budget, and that's going to take leadership. In addition to that, we want the city to be good stewards of public dollars because we're in an inevitable conflict. We're going to continue to run into this each year, and so today is a good day to start. I also want to address consolidations and efficiency and optimization because after this budget is adopted, we're going to be heading down that road. I think the key to success for that plan is that we are all partners together. Council, when you're working with the city manager, you're right to put your benchmarks and priorities on that. What is your direction for measuring success? The city manager, working with council and AFSCME, please continue to give us clear communication and guidance on the process. And for us, we'll need to make sure employees feel safe and prepared as we move forward. But all of this has to be predicated on shared goals too. Has to be on ensuring stability for the city's budget, definitely, ensuring job security, fair treatment and compensation for workers, and ensuring it's not just civilian workers carrying the load. I hope that we can all commit to a partnership built on good faith and shared values. And so we hope to see that leadership starting today. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Aloki Shaw, and I'm the president of the United Workers of Integral Care. I would first like to thank Mayor Watson for his amendment and inclusion of expansion of EMCOT into the City of Austin Fiscal Year 26 budget. Thank you for your recognition of the value of the work that we do as a vital part of the public safety system in Austin. Unfortunately, $1 million won't be enough to sustain 24/7 EMCOT. The annual operating cost to keep EMCOT running around the clock is $3 million to be at our best, so we are asking for an amendment to fully cover these costs so we can maintain quality 24/7 services and avoid layoffs. I would also like you to consider if the cuts and partial funding that have been made to housing and EMS are truly in the best interest of the community. All of these systems work together in collaboration on the ground to make life better for all Austinites. I would like to uplift the possible solution, cuts to vacant positions. While you're asking social service and other public safety providers to do more with less, APD has not been considered at all for places that might generate savings. If housing, mental health, IDD, and EMS are all working at full capacity, there will be less need for police overtime in the first place. We need balance in the system, and this balance will lead to a better society. I would like to uplift the need to keep the other integral care contracts intact. As we are another governmental agency, it makes sense for these contracts to be exempt and for interlocal agreements for these services to be explored. As the local mental health and IDD authority of the area, we are one of the largest social service providers for the community. Our services are key to keeping our community safe and healthy. Our contracts at Integral Care include services for adult behavioral health, housing, substance use, and crisis response. Our employees deliver these services every day to our community with expertise and compassion. We cannot afford to lose more funding, more workers, and more programs, as we have already been hit hard by federal and state cuts. I urge all of council to support this in full funding for 24/7 EMCOT. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Council. My name is Rich Heyman. I live in District 9. The message from voters is clear. Austinites want the Council to exercise more fiscal responsibility. It is not fiscally responsible to hold unspent funds in one part of the budget while not funding community priorities and key services for the most vulnerable in our community, thus endangering the health and safety of all residents. I'm talking, of course, about the police budget. Council needs to invoke Section 4B of the police contract and proportionally reduce its obligations to APD's share of the budget. Tens of millions of dollars are irresponsibly not being put to their intended use, which is to improve the department's recruiting and training processes. The hundreds of vacant officer positions are evidence that we have not seen progress on this front. This is a clear case where simply throwing more money at an issue does not fix it. Therefore, the responsible thing to do is to reallocate those funds to where we have a reasonable chance of making progress on community priorities, such as following through with the promising headway we've begun to make on our homeless strategy, as the mayor pointed out in his Watson Wire in October. We can't let those gains slip through our fingers. The funds stranded in the police budget need to be put towards more fiscally responsible and productive uses on community priorities, including fully funding social service contracts, rapid rehousing, permanent supportive housing, rental assistance, Austin Public Health, EMS, and parks, and supporting our city workers. It is imperative that council takes this opportunity to mitigate the structural deficit that the previously proposed budget puts us in. You must act now on Section 4B of the police contract. Thank you.
Continue on with item 4, Daniela Silva, Savannah Lee, Eli Cortez, Roxana Herdan, Alfredo Reyes.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. My name is Daniela Silva. I'm the Austin Policy Coordinator at Workers Defense Action Fund. In today's political environment, people are getting kidnapped off the streets and homelessness is being criminalized nationwide. Our neighbors are facing constant danger, and it is the duty of this council to do everything in its power to keep the people of Austin safe. Every department is being asked to make cuts after the failure of Prop Q, which many people felt they couldn't vote for after council agreed to such a bloated police budget, knowing that we would be facing a deficit this year. If every other department should have to make sacrifices, why should the police department be any kind of exception? I want my tax dollars to fund lawyers for immigrants, deeply affordable housing to keep people of all races and nationalities off the streets, the Hungry Hill Resource Center that provides vital, essential resources and workforce opportunities to many of our immigrant neighbors, and many other programs. I don't want my tax dollars being spent on things like AI surveillance technology, such as ALPRs, or the 300 police department vacancies, a departmental budget that needs to remain flat this year. Our community, our immigrant community, needs the safety that comes from robust EMS, parent support specialists, rent stabilization, and the ability to pay their bills. That is the public safety that our community wants funded, and it can only be done by reallocating money from the police department. Make the fiscally and morally correct decision and reallocate money from PD to fund all of the other forms of public safety that our communities so heavily rely on. Thank you.
Good afternoon, y'all. My name is Savannah Lee. I'm here with Equity Action, and I'm a resident of District 1. I had planned to talk about something different today, but then I saw some of the cuts that came overnight and was reminded of something that happened earlier this week. On Tuesday, a question came from a council member that I think encapsulates the choice that's being made today and the attitude that got us here. The question was something to the tune of, can we consider citations as a source of revenue for the city? What I heard was, can we use the police force to extract money from the least of us in order to avoid making cuts to said police force? I would say that was shocking, but that's not really true. That is the ethos of any governmental body who funds the police to this degree while making cuts to rapid rehousing and emergency mental health care. This week, you've heard over and over and over again that the people of this city want their services funded and want the police budget to remain stable because it's the fair thing to do. While a question as direct as the one that came from the dais this week may be grating, at least it's honest. At least it gets to the heart of what we're talking about here. We are choosing between providing aid, housing, healthcare, and food to folks in Austin, or adding additional funding for APD while asking everybody else to make sacrifices. I'm not sure why any of you got involved in politics. I can say from my experience, people generally begin this journey because they look around and they care deeply enough about the place they live that they want to give of their time to make it better. That's what I assume everyone in this room is doing. I have to, or I will lose my mind. If that's why you're here, I would urge you to listen to what we're all saying, if not in different ways. All that's being said really is, don't you care about us? Can't you fund the city in a way that tells us that you care about us? Can't you show us that you would rather see the folks of this city housed and fed than ticketed and arrested? That is what is at the heart of this issue. You've been given a choice to make, and all we've done this week is ask you to make the right one. Thank you.
Thank you, Savannah. My name is Eli Cortez. I'm an organizer of Vocal Texas and a resident of District 3. It is undeniable that our federal administration is carrying out a clear agenda to attack the most vulnerable and poor in this country and dismantle safety nets and long-term housing resources. We may not have had that clarity when we entered the city's budget process, but now we're in it and we can't deny it. We're facing multi-billion-dollar reductions in our federal housing department. That means hundreds of thousands of Americans losing their housing vouchers, shelter and homelessness funding being significantly reduced, and a guaranteed return to a boom in homelessness that we haven't seen since COVID. We need to be moving every single resource and dollar to housing and homelessness right now. We cannot wait. We never should have set aside critical and crucial services and programs to a tax rate election. Year after year, this dais in front of me and before shows its solidarity with police. There's endless supply of funds for police raises, for police quality of life, for improved surveillance technology, and you choose APD over us every single time, every year. Despite lower crime rates, despite 300 vacancies in the department, and despite the growing need and hunger in your districts, the crisis that we're facing is not going to be solved by policing. Community safety is not policing. Your police are not going to get people into a shelter. Your police are not going to make sure that our families are fed in this city. And federal cuts that are coming to our shelters, permanent housing resources, homelessness response system are not going to be supported by policing. We need to invest in real solutions that keep people housed and with access to true care and services. And right now, our city just conducted a 3-week sweep effort. There are people today that are hiding from police in creek beds, and there's a flood warning right now. We don't know what's going to happen to those people. And I just want to know, what are y'all going to do about it? What are you going to do in this budget to stand up for your people and your community and your residents?
Thank you very much.
Hello, I'm an organizer for Vocal Texas. My name is Alfredo Reyes. I was homeless for 7.5 years. Now I'm housed through the Rapid Rehousing Program, which ends in January. I'm so upset because Prop Q fell and that the federal government is cutting SNAP, Medicare, housing money. That means fewer people will get access to the resources and opportunities I got. More people are on the street, will suffer, and the entire community will suffer. For the last few weeks, I have been doing outreach in camps that have been swept. I've heard stories and witnessed people lives being destroyed. People lost their survival gear, identification, pictures, and their belongings. It's horrible. Last week, we came to the city council with people who have been swept. Those people shared their stories and asked the city to stop the sweeps and invest in things like shelters and rapid rehousing, and which helped me get off the street. Instead, we're back here today because while shelters and rapid rehousing and other many things get cut by the millions, APD budget remains exactly the same. As I ask myself, how can that be? APD has 330 vacant positions that can never be seem to be filled. That means money is just sitting unused. Why not reallocate money to help people? Trump's administration is attacking poor people and cutting HUD. Why not help us? What do you think will happen if poor people in our community have less access to food, shelter, and facing more policing? It will lead to more sweeps, ticketing, and arrests. You said homelessness is a priority on your budget, but all I've been seeing is just cuts. Only a few investments on the table now. The city council should reallocate money away from APD and put it towards housing services and care for people. Don't double down on funding police at the expense of shelter beds, rapid rehousing vouchers, services, and permanent supportive housing, and many critical other programs that help people. These are programs that help me.
Thank you, sir.
Continuing with item 4, Hans Maverick, Chris Harris, Benjamin Chantos, Bill Bunch.
Good afternoon, Mayor Watson, Mayor Pro Tem Fuentes, and council members. My name is Hans Maverick. I'm a resident of District 10, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you this afternoon. Today, I would like to talk to you about the distinction between spending and investing. Spending is what happens when you use financial resources to fix a problem that has already occurred. Investing is what happens when you use financial resources to prevent a problem from occurring in the first place. In this context, spending means giving even more money than last year to the Austin Police Department. Investing means spending money on the kinds of services that prevent people from encountering law enforcement in the first place. Something I think gets missed too often in conversations about police encounters with people who are struggling with substance use disorders, mental health challenges, and homelessness is that those situations are usually temporary. The right kind of intervention at the right time can make all the difference. What's more, policing in this country has an invidious history of disproportionately targeting people of color, undocumented people, poor people, and people with mental health challenges. I know a lot of fellow Austinites who have gotten back on their feet with the help of city programs. These programs prevent arrest. Being arrested, by contrast, and spending time, just a few days in jail, often means losing everything: your job, your housing, and your property. The programs I'm asking you all to support go to nonprofit organizations staffed by folks who have themselves dealt with being unhoused and related challenges. These orgs are in the best position to understand and help people overcome those challenges. While I'm up here, just a reminder that one group of organizations that absolutely don't need any of our money are those AI tech surveillance corporations. Thank you for your time.
Please, whenever you're ready.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Chris Harris. I'm here today representing Equity Action. I'm a resident of District 9, and I'm here to say something predictable, which is that this budget needs to keep the police budget flat. And the dollars saved from that can help people in real ways today. And I am personally extremely frustrated by the extent to which the hoops that this body will jump through itself, the hoops it will have the staff jump through, and the hoops it will make this community and those that care about it jump through in order to avoid even a very minor cut to the police department budget, which of course we know is not actually a cut. It's simply keeping it flat from last year. And again, for what reason? No real reason has been given. No reason that involves actually helping people in this community for not taking $13 million has been given. But we do know all the things that $13 million can fund. We've heard many examples just in the speeches today, much less the speeches the last 2 different days that you've heard. And I just want to bring your attention to the fiscal side of it beyond that, which is this council has talked about, the city staff has talked about for the last 2 years, regular tax increase elections in order to address ongoing budget shortfalls. That was before, those conversations started before Trump took over again and started cutting all these programs. Well, that's off the table. So what are you going to do? What are you going to do? You have a part of a budget that can never come down. And if you keep raising it, you are consigning this city to austerity forever. And just know, every $13 million does matter. It matters to people in this community who will be fed and housed rather than you just funding empty chairs for political reasons. Thank you.
My name is Benjamin Chantos, and I'm a resident of District 9. I'd first like to echo the sentiments of your constituents that you've heard so far. I'm here today to voice my opposition to raising the police budget and encourage you to invest in the long-term fiscal health of our city and the community of Austin. I read that the budget proposed in July has since been amended to save $9 million by restructuring overtime scheduling. I'd like to commend you for that. With that said, I believe further amendments to APD's budget are necessary and ethical. Take, for instance, the fact that sworn officers stand to receive a 50% higher wage increase compared to other city employees. Senate Bill 23 of the 87th legislature requires us to hold elections before reducing our reallocation or reallocating our law enforcement budget. So every dollar allocated towards the APD's already inflated budget will be a dollar that won't fund preventative wraparound services that ensure the safety of our community's most vulnerable members and their families. Thank you.
Wrapping up with item 4, Christopher Page, Ashley Copeland, Ben Suddaby, Monica Guzman, Alicia Castillo.
Please begin whenever you're ready.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for having us, Council and Mayor. My name is Ashley Copeland. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for the Central Texas Public Safety Commission, and I've prepared a statement. Regardless of where we stand today on so many issues, many, not all of us agree on, one thing that I know that we can come together and agree on is that we love the city and that we want Austin to thrive and to remain safe, and we want it to be a welcoming home for its residents. That shared belief is what brought us together today, and it's what brings me here today on behalf of the Central Texas Public Safety Commission. The Commission recognizes that the men and women who make that shared goal possible is our first responders. They show up every day in unpredictable, high-pressure situations so that the rest of us can go about our lives with confidence and security. Their commitment is the backbone to the safety in Austin. The Commission supports sustaining and strengthening funding for our city's first responders. Public safety is not another line item, but it's a foundation on which every other priority should rest. From economic growth, transportation, education, none of it works without our commitment to public safety. In my position at the Commission, I see firsthand the dedication, professionalism, and compassion that our public safety officers demonstrate every single day. I also see the strain placed on them when resources do not keep on pace with the demand. Investing in their well-being, readiness, and capacity is not just an investment in them, but it's an investment in our city. Today, we ask that you prioritize a budget that reflects the essential role of these individuals and that they consistently, that our budget reflects the essential role these individuals play in our city's health, safety, and future. They consistently show up for us, and I ask today that we show up for them. Thank you all so much for your time.
Ms. Guzman.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'm Monica Guzman, Policy Director at GAVA, reading a resident statement. My name is Taniqua Brewster, and I want to speak against the current budget plan that probably means a $38 million loss for social services that are needed for the sustainability of lower income communities. The improper allocations of these funds means more strain and stress on an already unaffordable Austin. You need to invest in the people and not for the for-profit corporations and developers. We are losing affordable housing. There's an increase in homelessness, and the loss of these programs means you've chosen profit over people. Those of us directly affected are creating valuable solutions, but the cut in the budget will make it harder for a lasting change. GAVA hopes that the Council takes this opportunity to restore trust and build accountability with the communities most in need of basic services and critical programs. GAVA urges you to prioritize the needs brought up in the community investment budget and to take immediate action to identify sources outside of the general budget to restore funding to those you cannot fund inside it. Thank you.
Thanks, Monica. My name is Alicia Castillo. I'm here representing the Texas Civil Rights Project and a resident of District 3. We are supportive and thankful to the council for all the work that they've done in the past to fund critical services like immigrant legal services, like emergency rent assistance, like the youth summer programs and youth development programs that we have in the city, like the Hungry Hill Day program that serves so many districts in the city. And we are opposed to the slashing of those services in this budget. And we're also opposed to any proposal that might come out that punts the decision about whether to reallocate funding from vacancies and overtime to support these critical services, that punts that decision to mid-year. And the reason we are so vehemently opposed to that is because HB 1900, passed in the 87th legislative session, makes it so that whatever budget you pass today for the police cannot be reduced. I understand that there are different interpretations of the law. That is Texas Civil Rights Project's official interpretation of HB 1900, that you will not be able to reduce the budget today, and we're asking you to keep it flat. I'll say personally, it is really shocking and frustrating to be in an era where it feels more politically palatable for us to slash emergency rental assistance and homelessness programs than it does to slash vacancies that have been vacant for 2 years. That's really offensive to the conscience. So I wanted to mention that, but also just note that when the federal administration's secret police descend upon the city, people will lose their jobs. People who look like me will lose their jobs because they will be afraid to leave their homes. And that's when we need things like emergency rental assistance. That's when we need immigration legal resources in this city, not the police who will, once again, probably pepper spray me when I'm out there protesting the secret police. So thank you for your time.
My name is Ben Sutterby. I'm a resident of District 4, speaking on behalf of myself and not anyone else. I want to thank the council for the work that has gone in these short few days into adding and proposing some changes that try and preserve as much of our social safety net as we can. I want to echo what was just said because I know what fiscal prudence is. It is that an ounce of prevention beats a pound of cure. We're going to have to pay for things one way or the other. And it is better to take care of our neighbors. It is better to take care of it in a prevention early on than it is to pay to clean up the mess. It is cheaper to keep somebody housed than to rehouse them after they've already lost a home that they lived in. It is cheaper to vaccinate our community than it is to have mass outbreaks that we have to scramble and deal with. This is things that you know. You also know where the money is. I don't think that anybody's asking for anything radical. What we're asking for is a balance, a smoothing out. All the burden shouldn't be borne by certain sections of your employees. I want to thank you for listening to AFSCME's priorities. I am a proud member of that union. I really do feel for our city members as they face uncertain times. I also feel for our community as we face uncertain times. And uncertain economic times is when we most need a social safety net. That is what will preserve our tax base. That's what's going to preserve the folks who go to the restaurant and spend money. You know, we have heard many times about the fickle nature of sales tax revenue. The way we bolster our community is by taking care of each other. And I want to see those priorities reflected to every extent possible in the budget that y'all pass. I know that this is what my fellow Austinites want. Thank you.
Moving on to item 5, Rich Heyman, Angela Valenzuela.
Good afternoon, Council. My name is Rich Heyman. I'm a resident in District 9. In just about an hour from now, I'll be heading to Lockhart to teach an urban studies class at the women's prison there. The students are amazing, and they are worth the rush hour drive to Lockhart twice a week. And by the way, this is a volunteer gig I'm talking about. I don't get paid. All of my students are either from poor backgrounds, formerly homeless, or had mental health challenges. Yet they all came from communities that did not have adequate services to address these struggles. Instead, their issues were left to the criminal justice system. We know such a system is really a difference of funding priorities. We need to prioritize social services for our most vulnerable, not irresponsible spending on policing. Thank you.
For item 6, Rich Heyman, Brent Davey.
Mr. Heyman's passing.
Then Mayor, all speakers have been called for 4, 5, and 6.
Great, thank you very much. And thanks to all of you for being here and commenting on this. Members, as you just heard, we have heard from all of the speakers that have signed up on items 4, 5, and 6. I want to kind of get a feel for the council. We can either right now go ahead and get a motion out on the table and begin the discussion of that motion, including any questions that anybody might have. But I want to make sure that everybody's is ready to go to that, I guess, is what I'm asking about. All right, in that case, then, if our professional staff will come forward. Members, that'll take us to item number 4. Item number 4 is an ordinance amending Ordinance number 20251120council, by which we adopted the city's budget for fiscal year 2025-2026. We conducted a hearing on this yesterday, and we also allowed for public comment on this item just now and 2 days ago. The base motion that I will accept is to adopt version 2 of the ordinance, which includes as Exhibit A the city manager's proposed amendments to the adopted budget. After that motion is made, we will take up any amendments to the moved ordinance that's recommended by staff, and then council amendments to the moved ordinance as amended by the staff amendments. So let me walk through that again. The motion is, and I'll ask for the motion in a minute, but the motion is, it will be to amend, it'll be version 2 of the ordinance, which includes the Exhibit A, the city manager's proposed amendments to the adopted budget. And then what we will do is we will turn to staff for the staff proposed amendments, and then we will take up any council amendments to the moved ordinance as amended by the staff amendments. Is there a motion and a second to adopt the ordinance amending ordinance number 2025-08-13-005, adopting the city's fiscal year 2025-2026 budget? Is there a motion? Motion is made by Councilmember Siegel. It is seconded by Councilmember Alter. What we will do now is we will have a staff presentation of the staff recommended amendments.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Carrie Lang, Director of Budget and Organizational Excellence. On yesterday evening and then again this morning, we gave a memo that walked through some of the proposed amendments that we are recommending to the budget for this fiscal year. I just have a couple of slides to talk through those amendments. And so what you'll see here in this first slide is a breakdown of the reductions that we are recommending for us to get to a balanced budget. We looked at several items, whether or not those were items that were included in the city manager's recommended proposed amended budget, or items that were included in baseline funding for some of the staff, as well as the proposed budget earlier this year. This first item that you see up here, and I won't go through every single one, but this first item in particular is moving some of the funding for navigation services to the Hope Fund. As if you remember, the Hope Fund was created fully in this fiscal year. We have appropriation that should be coming in December for the Hope Fund, and that will give that $500,000 instead of being in the general fund to the Hope Fund. The additions that we are recommending include the non-congregate shelters at $2.9 million, the permanent supportive housing that you see here at $200,000. That is the general fund portion of the permanent supportive housing. There is $2 million in the housing trust fund that will continue to be funded for 1 year for that permanent supportive housing services. The $2.5 million to eliminate brownouts for EMS sworn stations, as well as $1 million for the MCOT program. Then there is $120,000 for the child advocacy services in Williamson County. And to address food insecurities, there are food pantries at Title I schools, as well as home delivery meals for our older community. Those are the amendments that we're recommending be added to or be changed from the city manager's recommended proposed for this fiscal year.
So members, what we'll do, first of all, I'll get a motion and a second on the staff amendments. For clarity purposes, what I think we will do is we will then go to council amendments, and the council amendments will be motions to amend the staff amendment. Now, I'm doing that so that we have clarity that that's what we're addressing. And so I'd like to get a motion and a second on the staff amendments, and then I'll recognize for discussion. Do we have a motion and a second on the staff amendments that Ms. Director Lang just laid out? The motion is made by Councilmember Lane. Is there a second? I'll second the motion. Councilmember Cadre.
This is the time that we can take to ask questions.
Sure.
Great. I had my first question.
Councilmember Siegel, you'll be following Councilmember Cadre.
I had my first question for Ed. Could you clarify that as it relates to the APD budget, is it locked in at the level set today, or is there room for movement?
I think you're questioning in regard to the state statute that doesn't allow the APD budget to be lowered from one year to the next?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the benchmark there is the budget that was approved for fiscal year 25. And so as long as our fiscal year 26 budget, whether it be the adopted budget or amended budget, because you can amend the budget any council meeting, as long as we don't go below the fiscal year 25 appropriation, we are not in violation of that statute.
Got it. And could you remind us what that number was for fiscal year 25? Or sorry, 24?
I believe the difference between the 2 years was about $12.3 million.
Got it.
In just the general fund. We believe we need to also take into account some other non-general fund, police department funds, and the delta there was about $9.5 million. So in other words, the FY26 total appropriations for police across various funds is about $9.5 million more than what it was in fiscal year 25.
Okay, great. And then I have a question for Carrie. Could you explain, in the proposed base budget, could you explain any cuts that have already occurred to the police budget?
Yes. So the police did have a $9 million reduction in overtime, and that was based on the restaffing model that the chief put into place in fiscal year 25, and that carried over to result in $9 million of annualized savings. There was $500,000 in savings with the move of the Blue Santa warehouse to a city facility. I believe those were the two major ones. And let me double check to make sure I didn't miss one.
Okay, so about $9.5 million in reduction. Oh.
The last one, right. The last one was the police department has historically had the Travis County Jail ILA in their budget, and we moved that out to the fund level, and I believe that was $16.1 million.
I'm sorry.
$16.1 million.
16.1. Okay. So that is what, 25.1 million?
Yes, 25.6, I believe.
25, oh, sorry, 25.6. I wrote that. I can count. And then my last question, as it relates to all this, I have a question for Chief Davis, if she's here. I have a question for Chief Davis really quick. Thank you, Chief. I just had a question on as it relates to cuts. If APD has any additional cuts, let's say it's $2 million, $4 million, $6 million, $8 million, $10 million. I'm throwing around numbers. How does that affect APD and the work they all do?
Well, I think I kind of go back to when I was hired by all of you here just a year ago, and all the changes and that you wanted to see here within the police department. And I do feel that I have certainly been responsible with this budget that I have. Looking at the changes we're doing, implementing the researchers that we've brought in. We have Barry Dunn recommendations. We're 13 recommendations. We are going to do those recommendations, and there's going to be a budget and a cost to those recommendations. And so as we're moving forward and getting progress here, which I feel we are, and so anything from this budget would take away from that progress.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Councilmember Siegel. Thank you, Councilmember Qadri.
Thank you, Mayor. And I just want to share something with you as our master of procedure. The subquorum I'm working with has a proposed substitute motion for the staff motion.
Has anyone seen that?
So I'm just sharing that now. They're bringing it down. I'm going to start with questions.
Okay.
But procedurally, I just want to give you a heads up that we are going to propose a substitute motion.
Go ahead with your questions, and we'll see what we have.
Thanks, sir. And thank you again to the budget team for all of your hard work. I wanted to start with the proposed additions, Director Lang. If you could explain the $2.9 million for non-congregate shelters, and in particular, there's a lot of different providers for shelters. We have the Other Ones Foundation, we have Foundation Communities, we have the Safe Alliance. So if you could explain, give us a little more context of who would qualify for this funding stream.
In the adopted budget, there was $5.1 million, I believe, for emergency shelters, and that included the dollars for the Other Ones Foundation and several other agencies in the adopted budget that was relying on the TRE. And with that change, with the TRE not passing, and the understanding that the Other Ones Foundation, I believe, the city has already paid into the development of that site, and those dollars would allow for the Other Ones Foundations to open up that development. That $2.9 million was focused on that site versus the other dollars that were not included or that were not available because of the failure of the TRE.
Thank you. And then in terms of the other providers, they would probably not be receiving funds under this proposal?
Correct.
Thank you. And then in terms of the EMS item, EMS swarm overtime to eliminate brownouts, $2.5 million. Previously we understood that $4.3 million was needed to prevent brownouts, especially in the context of avoiding brownouts and also avoiding other major cuts to EMS programs. So if you could explain the difference between the $4.3 million number and the $2.5 million number.
Sure. When EMS created their enhancement request during the proposed budget process, they were looking holistically at their programming, including brownouts as well as the academy and recruiting functions. And so we broke down those costs to show what was specifically needed for eliminating the station brownouts, the funding that was needed for that versus the other programmatic functions. And so that $2.5 million represents the dollars that are required to eliminate the station brownouts in the coming fiscal year.
Thank you. And then moving on to what we call EMCOT. In this staff proposal, $1 million is proposed for expanded mobile crisis outreach team. And our understanding was that the actual budget number to guarantee 24/7 EMCOT was roughly $3.08 million. Could you explain the $1 million recommendation in that context, please?
Sure. As we were talking to staff about the EMCOT funding and the possible needs related to that funding, it was determined that about $1 million would allow for EMCOT to continue the same level of services that they're doing right now, which is a little bit more expanded services that I think they did before fiscal year 25. And this $1 million would allow for that continued service. And the conversation that I believe has been had was better understanding the data behind the 24/7 request and understanding whether or not the data supports the 24/7, or if there's a way to expand the hours with these additional funds that we've included.
Thank you, Director. And then on the proposed adjustments and reductions, if you could share, I guess, first of all, give an overview of how you came to these recommended adjustments and reductions.
Sure. As we looked at the items that, or as we feel like we heard from the council on the items that were priority, we understood that the major priorities were including funding for homelessness, particularly emergency shelters, as well as PSH. We understood that there was a need to address the EMS brownouts, and we understood that part of that need, or part of that priority, included working through and understanding or making sure we had funding for MCOT. With the limited dollars that we had, and understanding that we wanted to make sure we balanced and kept as much of the priorities in place, we looked at how we could address those specific priorities without completely removing all the other things. But it did take a reduction in several areas. And so we looked at what departments had, what we already put into place from departments. We also looked at the areas of homelessness that we thought we could balance out and continue to serve at the baseline levels. And so those are the general ideas that we looked at as we tried to come up with the correct balance of dollars to reduce as in comparison to what we were trying to increase.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it. Mayor, I believe now the dais has in front of them the substitute motion as well as the exhibit that goes with it. So, of course, I'm happy to defer to other questions of.
Yeah, what I'd like to do, Councilmember, is in fairness, has staff seen this?
I mean, they've seen it through the development, but this is just produced. Yes.
Okay, so what I would suggest we do, in fairness to the subquorum and being recognized to have a substitute motion that's now just hitting the dais. And I want to be fair in that, but I think it's only appropriate for staff, for the rest of the council.
Yes.
And for staff to have a moment to actually look at what's in this.
Yes, sir.
And what is being suggested. And the rest of the council may have questions of the professional staff about what it is that this substitute motion does, because that's why we rely on them.
That's right.
So, Councilmember Velasquez, you're the only, well, and now the Mayor Pro Tem, do y'all want to do questions before we take a break and allow the staff to look at this?
My questions are related to the staff amendment, so yes,
Okay.
before we consider the substitute.
Okay, then Councilmember Velasquez, what's your situation?
Mr. Mayor, I don't want to disrupt the proceeds, but I have questions now too.
Okay, fair enough. Then what we'll do is I tell you what, let's do, just so that staff has an idea of what's in this thing and the other council members have an idea of what's in it. What I'm going to recommend we do is that we recess until 4:30. At that point, we'll come back and I'll recognize the Mayor Pro Tem for questions on the staff recommendation. Actually, I'll recognize Councilmember Velasquez first, then the Mayor Pro Tem, then Councilmember Harper Madison, and then Councilmember Vela. So without objection, we're in recess until 4:30 p.m. All right, everybody, it's 4:30 on November 20th, 2025, and I will call back to order the Austin City Council at this regular meeting of the City Council.
Thank you, Mayor.
Members, we have a couple of items that I want to clean up before we go back into items 4, 5, and 6. What we're going to do is on item number 62, during the break, it was brought to my attention that on item number 62, the ordinance in the backup has the incorrect effective date. The date should be December 1st, 2025. So the Mayor Pro Tem moves that we reconsider the vote by which item number 62 was adopted. It is seconded by Councilmember Vela. Discussion on that item. Without objection, item number 62 will be reconsidered. The Mayor Pro Tem moves that item number 62 be adopted with the effective date being December 1st, 2025. It is seconded by Councilmember Vela. All those without objection, that item is adopted with the effective date being December 1st, 2025, with Councilmember Lane and Councilmember Cadre being temporarily off the dais. Members on items, they will be shown voting in favor. It was unanimous. On items number 74 and 75, which were two zoning items, Councilmember Harper Madison had to be temporarily off screen, and so she was not counted in that vote. She would like to be shown voting in favor of items 74 and 75. It will not change the outcome of the vote. Councilmember Vela moves and Councilmember Siegel seconds that Councilmember Harper Madison be shown voting in favor of items 74 and 75. Is there any objection? Without objection, Councilmember Harper Madison will be shown voting in favor of items 74 and 75. Members, the manager has asked that we give him a couple more minutes. So what I'm going to do, I was hoping that that would take a little longer than it did, but y'all are very efficient, so thank you. We'll stand at recess, but I hope everybody kind of stands by their chairs until 4:40. Without objection, we're in recess. It is 4:33. Folks, there's some additional work going on the numbers. I know that surprises everybody. But because we want to make sure we have a thorough and a thoughtful process, I want to make sure I give the manager's office and our financial staff enough time to go through those numbers, including the new numbers or the new proposals that they've seen. So what we're going to do is we're going to be in recess until 5 o'clock. Try to give everybody another 15 minutes, and then we'll come back. We'll start with questions the council members had, but I know Mr. Van Eno can probably answer all of them with his hands tied behind his back, but in case we need them, we'll want them, if that's okay with you. Okay, he says we need them. All right, without objection, the city council is in recess until 5 o'clock p.m. It's 4:43 p.m. now. Back to order the Austin City Council. It's 5:23 p.m. on November 20th, 2025. Members, when we took a break, it was so that our professional staff would have a chance to look at a document that was provided to them and have a chance to look at those numbers. But when we broke, we were going to have some questions, and I want to go back to those. My memory was Councilmember Velasquez, followed by the Mayor Pro Tem, and then I don't remember who else had punched the button, and for some reason it's been cleared here. So if you want to speak again, put your name up there. And but we'll start with Councilmember Velasquez, and you've got the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. My first question is for Chief Luckritz. And while he's coming down, I guess I can ask staff on the MCOT money. Can you clarify if the proposed $1 million for MCOT would help achieve the 24/7 response, and if not, what is that $1 million guarantee?
Thanks, Councilmember. So the $1 million, my understanding is, would allow for MCOT to continue the service level that they began in mid fiscal year 25. So they did hire up some additional staff based on that one-time funding that we provided in fiscal year 25, and it would allow for that additional expanded hours. I'm not sure of the exact expanded hours, but it will continue the services that they began mid-year.
Thank you. Chief, we asked earlier, or somebody asked earlier of staff about the 2.5 in funding for EMS. Can you share if and how that proposed 2.5 funding for EMS sworn overtime will it eliminate the brownouts?
So the 2.5 million in funding gives us the resources we need in order to well, I'll say ensure, but based on the current run, maintain all of our stations open and functioning with ambulances in them. Certainly, we cannot predict what the future year may hold or any of those other things, but based on our current projections, that would be adequate for us to keep those stations open.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councilmember. Mayor Pro Tem, followed by Councilmember Alter and Councilmember Vela.
Thank you. Colleagues, wanted to start with the staff's proposal for the amendment that they are offering for the budget. You know, we were emailed the staff amendment last night, I think around 11 o'clock. So I want to first thank for our staff and public who perhaps are watching. Just appreciate your patience because we've had less than 24 hours to deliberate what staff has come up with, and then have also worked on an alternative amendment that lays out different ways in which we can fund our priorities. So I just want to acknowledge the time here because we are being very thoughtful and intentional and disciplined in how we approach this budget. And so wanted to share that out. So staff has proposed taking our priority amendments that we've discussed, or priority areas that we discussed yesterday, and put forth before us a $7.2 million amendment that it lays out here on page 1 the areas in which we would invest in. My main issue with this is that nowhere during yesterday's conversation did we say pull it from parks or pull it from homelessness. And yet what we see, what staff is recommending, is that in order to fund our priority areas, they have pulled more than half of it from homelessness investments. And they've also decreased half of the new parks investments. And so I'm really wanting to focus on the areas that staff is proposing to reduce in order to fund areas that we have deemed priority, including a portion of the MCOT 24/7 mental health response, as well as EMS. So I guess first and foremost, before I go through my line of questioning here, I just wanted to ask staff if there's any other context or insight that they want to provide as to why the reductions that are proposed here to fund our priority areas lean so heavily, half of it being homelessness and then an additional $1 million from parks. Talk us through why you identified those areas versus looking through other parts of city departments for efficiencies.
Sure. So as we began looking at how to rebalance the budget or what the options were, we understood that the priorities for moving forward included the non-congregate shelters as well as the permanent supportive housing, among the other items that you mentioned. And so when we started looking at ways to balance those things, we had already looked at a number of the amendments and changes that were in the city manager's recommended proposed that we gave on November 7th. We went back and looked at a number of the prioritization items, and several of those items, even though when we went through the proposed budget process, those items were put in place in May. Departments recommended those changes in May of this year. As we continued to move through this process and began this fiscal year, several of those items are no longer viable for a number of reasons. One, as the department started doing their operations for fiscal year 26, we gave the instruction to stay at fiscal year 25 levels, and they started looking at hiring positions that they may have held because they were not reduced in the budget process. Some of those dollars were one-time dollars and were not viable for fiscal year 26. So we combed through some of those previous recommendations, and we looked at what we thought was an understanding of the permanent supportive housing, TOOF, MCOT, EMS. Those were the priorities that we understood council to have for our updated recommendation. We recognize that there are some give and take in the recommendation we put forward, but with PART in particular, those additional 10 positions would allow for them to continue the work. In my mind, that would mean that we would still look at years 2 and 3 and 4 of this forecast period to see how we could potentially add more resources to PART, but we were committed to doing at least those 10 this year. I think this is just an overview or a recommendation that allows or appreciates the give and take that we have to do because of the fiscal restraints that we have, and just choosing what we think we could implement in this fiscal year.
And just for colleagues, part of what our subquorum reference through this process was the prioritization list that staff developed in part of the earlier budget process. And in that, departments were asked for their own areas in which they would recommend cuts. And as Ms. Lang laid out here, this information is old now because it was last done in May. And so I guess my next question is, were the departmental leaders asked to update this information as part of consideration for this updated budget process?
We did not ask departments to go back and give more or updated cuts. What we did was we looked at the ones that were still listed and we asked questions of the departments, but we did not go back and give new instruction to provide new reductions for this budget 2.0.
Thank you. I am worried about not having that built into our process here, knowing that we're poised to adopt a new budget and not knowing that there have been changes to the city and how we operate in the last few months, that we don't have our departmental leaders weighing in on areas that they see as opportunities for efficiencies or areas to reprioritize, which is why I'm very concerned with the proposal that the staff has laid out, because there's a number of reductions, continued reductions within homelessness and parks. And so I'm wondering if Director Gray is here so he could speak to some of the reductions that are being proposed here on the homelessness front. The first item I'd like to go through is the recommendation to move the homelessness navigation services to Hope Fund. And the Hope Fund was a new fund that was created, I believe, just in the last year. And it might be helpful, Ms. Lang, if we could go over how the Hope Fund is funded and how it gets its revenue sources.
I pause because I'm trying to think through how to best describe, but the Hope Fund is funded primarily through TPID dollars. And those dollars, and I'm going to lean to Ed to see if he can if he has the details of how those dollars roll through for TPID to Hope.
So we're talking about the tourism PID the council established, and so there's different provisions now in general when the convention center is up and running, to the extent they provide incentives to events to come to Austin and occupy the convention center. The tourism PID can reimburse the city for the incentives that we've had to pay in order to get events to come here. And of course, those people then use hotels. So that's kind of how the funding cycle works. Council passed a resolution that as the tourism PID starts putting off revenue, that revenue would get deposited into the Hope Fund.
And that first deposit, when was that? Because it was recent.
So the first deposit will come in on a December 11th on the next council meeting. That's when we plan on bringing forward.
And is it, what amount is that? Will that be?
We anticipate $942,000.
Okay, thank you. Director Gray, if you could speak to the reductions that are being proposed here by the city manager on areas where we can reallocate dollars. There are a number of cuts to homelessness services, including around rapid rehousing, reduced funding for the bridge shelter, landlord engagement, homelessness diversion services, and as well as emergency rental assistance. Can you talk through what these reductions, proposed reductions, would do to our homelessness response system?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. David Gray, Director, Austin Homeless Strategies and Operations. So as you may recall, earlier this year, Council directed our office to lay out some recommendations on how to continue to develop our local homeless response system. And so staff presented those recommendations in June. Those recommendations in turn informed what staff brought to Council in August for the budget that you ultimately adopted. But with Proposition Q failing, we've now had to readjust and reprioritize what we think is most critical for us to sustain. As I had mentioned on yesterday, our top priority right now is to do no harm to the infrastructure that we've already invested in and things that we are already building. And so what that would mean for us is first sustaining our investment in the Marshland Yard Emergency Shelter so we don't lose those 287 beds that we currently operate. The second is continuing our investments in new shelter beds, particularly ones that the city has already invested funding in. I think as Ms. Lang alluded to earlier today, we've invested about $1.5 million into the construction of new shelter beds out at the Esperanza community. And we're aware that if we are not able to find ongoing operating dollars for that investment, not only might we not see the new 100 beds out at the Esperanza community, but the existing 100 beds might also be forced to close. The third is investments in supportive services at the permanent supportive housing developments that the city of Austin has funded. This is even more important, we believe, now for us to consider than it was when we first adopted the budget, because in that time, the federal government has shifted their funding priorities, and they are significantly reducing how much COCs can spend on permanent supportive housing. And so all the more important for us to sustain our investments there. The other big thing that we did this past year is get more upstream of homelessness by investing in homeless prevention services, homeless diversion services, landlord engagement, et cetera. The staff recommendation that was presented last night and discussed today, as you mentioned, eliminates the ongoing funding for those services from this year's budget. Our office does have our existing contracts that are funded with one-time funds. We can sustain those contracts through FY26, so we'd still be okay this fiscal year. However, we have to reconsider if we're going to provide ongoing funding for those investments next fiscal year, or if we're going to get out of the business of providing that minimal housing assistance, which is not something that our office would recommend that we do. So I'll pause right there, Mayor Pro Tem, to see if you have any additional questions or anything else you'd like me to clarify.
Well, I mean, if you could speak specifically to the rapid rehousing, the 1 million reduction in rapid rehousing beds, the 750,000 reduction in bridge shelters, the 600,000 reduction in landlord engagement, 500,000 reduction in homelessness diversion services.
Yes, ma'am.
Those specific reductions would impact the homelessness response system.
Yes, ma'am. So for the 1 million elimination in the new funding for rapid rehousing programs, that would leave us with our existing baseline of about 4.8 million for rapid rehousing, which makes up 8% of our social services budget. We've had to pause new rapid rehousing intakes this fiscal year, or I guess last fiscal year, to transition people who were in the one-time ARPA-funded rapid rehousing programs into the ongoing general fund-funded rapid rehousing programs, so that those clients didn't exit the ARPA programs back into homelessness. Because of that pause in new intakes, the backlog for the rapid rehousing has grown. This $1 million would have allowed us to address some of that backlog. So without it, the backlog remains. We will still continue to provide rapid rehousing as a city-funded program, but our ability to catch up is going to be limited. In addition, I had spoken about the federal government shifting their funding priorities. That shift in funding priorities also affects federally funded rapid rehousing programs in our community too. So we are going to see some rapid rehousing programs that are not city funded, they're federally funded. Those programs may lose that federal funding. So just wanted to note that. When it comes to the $750,000 for bridge shelters, Those dollars would have enabled us to provide housing assistance to our Northbridge and Southbridge clients to help those clients move on into housing. It essentially is the output, and it allows us to free up more beds in the bridge shelters. So when we do our HEAL initiatives or the encampment closures, we have beds to place people into. And so by removing this $750,000, we won't have funding for that dedicated housing support at the bridge shelters. And so it slows our bed turnover at the shelters. The loss of $600,000 in landlord engagement, again, we have our existing contract with Housing Connector. It's funded for this fiscal year, so it wouldn't have an impact on us this fiscal year. But if we weren't able to identify funding for next fiscal year, then we would have to reevaluate if we keep that relationship with Housing Connector. And then the $500,000 for homeless diversion services. We have our existing contract for the Wayfinder program. That's good for this fiscal year. So we're covered for this fiscal year. We also have one extension on that contract. So we're assuming we get funding next fiscal year at our baseline, we'll have that program covered in FY27 as well.
So for the landlord engagement and the homelessness diversion services, we have sufficient funding to hold us over for this fiscal year?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then the other question I wanted to dig into is if we could get Chief Luckritz back. I just want to talk through the overtime for EMS and better understand the proposal that is before us. This, to me, is key, and I just want to make sure, because Chief Luckritz, you mentioned for the record that having this amount that staff is proposing would be sufficient to keep us from having to have brownouts, ambulances that are not in use due to staffing shortages, and that amount would be $2.5 million. That is different than what the association says is needed to prevent brownouts. And it's different than what was in the enhancements list that was shared with us earlier this summer. So can you just talk us through the differences there and what other contexts we should be aware of and how this $2.5 million is sufficient to eliminate brownouts?
Sure. So as I mentioned earlier, as we look at what our spend was last year, in terms of having all of the available resources and all the initiatives that we had across the entire department moving forward, it was a higher amount. When we look at kind of the need for us to focus in on these core services and ensure that we have adequate station coverage across the county, the $2.5 million represents what it would require for us to have the funding necessary to ensure that we have an ambulance in every EMS station. The difference that you see between that and, say, the $4.4 million represents the vast majority of that represents the efforts that we were making towards our onboarding and recruiting efforts to really address the ongoing vacancies. What we've seen, and in our discussions, is we kind of weigh the pros and cons and where best to allocate our resources. We were running coming into 2025 with a significant number of individuals on our recruiting list that we were trying to bring on board, and the increased costs, as I described earlier, of both recruiting, but even more so that onboarding and the long time that it takes for us to bring people from joining the department to becoming fully productive within the workforce. Our current academy right now that we have going on is 17, which is dramatically lower than what we had seen in 2025 with academies up to 41 individuals. And so as we look at the timeline for bringing those individuals from previous years fully online and fully productive, and we look at what this year would look like given where we are at already into this fiscal year of the need to do recruiting, and then application process, and then onboarding, trying to be realistic about how many new people we would actually bring on in this fiscal year that then we would have to do. And so we're not at a place from a pipeline perspective as we were in the beginning of 2025. We need to prime the pipe this year. We need to put a lot of efforts into our recruiting and getting back out into the national stage, getting back out in the communications of the great work that we're doing here in Austin, build that pipeline, and then we'll work with the city manager, the city manager's office, look at our own structure to see then how do we take the folks that are in that starting pipeline and actually bring them on board into the coming years.
I guess I'm just, because at the beginning you said that the rest of the 4.4 million was for recruitment, but you just also shared that the need to prioritize recruitment. So how do you plan to prioritize recruitment if you don't have the funding that is needed for those efforts?
Yes, so the bulk of that was really the onboarding piece and the academies. And so I'm kind of maybe blending those together a little bit, recruiting and onboarding and the academy piece. It's really going to be a lot of marketing. It's going to be a lot of getting our teams back. We really trimmed our travel last year as well. And so we were not marketing ourselves at some of the large national and large regional conferences across the country. And so we want to get back out there and try to, again, reinvigorate the community to come to Austin and set some realistic timelines as we're out there of what that would look like for us moving forward. It is a long process for us from start to finish to get folks to come to Austin. And what we see sometimes is individuals that want to come to Austin, it is a long process. And I think it's important for us to evaluate those processes, to work through a comprehensive plan for how it is that we can streamline that process as we go into fiscal year 2027.
Can you provide more details specifically how that portion of funding, the gap funding that would have gone to onboarding for the new medics going through academy, how, like, if we don't have that funding, how does that affect onboarding specifically?
So we would look at, or we are looking at, right, the number of individuals that say are in queue to potentially join us in an academy. And in order for us to really get to where we want to be from a staffing perspective and to fill our vacancies, we need to make sure that the number of individuals that we're putting into our academies exceeds the number of individuals that are departing the department. And as we grow, we had reached that period in 2025 when we were having 30 to 40 individuals per academy at times. Where we are at now with those lower numbers, what it does for us from an onboarding perspective is it keeps us whole as we really start to rethink that strategy of going into future fiscal years and how it is that we can change the way that we do onboarding as a department to be able to facilitate in a responsible manner getting ourselves to being able to continue larger academies and have that pipeline built up to be able to staff those academies as well.
Thank you. I just, I'm struggling here in understanding how having a reduction in the funding that EMS needs for recruitment and onboarding, but knowing that we have a 15% vacancy rate within the EMS department and knowing the importance of us recruiting and having that pipeline as a way to offset the overtime funding that we are essentially trying to address with this amendment. I mean, those two go hand in hand. So for reducing the portion that's focused on recruitment, every year we'll have to come back and add more for overtime because we're not getting the necessary amount of medics through the pipeline. I mean, any thoughts on?
Yeah, I think it's important for us in this coming year, or I should say this existing year here, to really work with the team, work with the city manager's office, really work towards, I think, as many of the other public safety departments are seeing, is how can we rethink overall? One of the challenges that we have is as I've said, the exponential growth that we're seeing in our departments, or certainly in our department, and that's a unique challenge for us. We are up more than 100 people in seats, staff in seats from when I started in 2022. The challenge that we have here is as much about dealing with that growth as it is with dealing with turnover. And so it's a slightly different mechanism for us as we look to not just maintain the turnover, which is historically what many of these agencies have done, right? We have enough folks coming through and to maintain us in the size that we are today or the size that we were in 2022. But if we are going to grow the department as quickly and as we need to see in order to fulfill those initiatives that you have funded over the years, those additional positions that you have given us, we're going to need to vastly expand that recruiting piece and vastly expand that onboarding piece. And so that requires us to really build a solid infrastructure. When I spoke earlier this week, This year for us in 2026, fiscal year 2026, is a little bit of about back to the basics. I think many departments are going through that same thing of looking at our overall infrastructure. We've grown by several hundred, over 100 new positions since I came here, and our overall operations has grown by almost 50%. We need to take a pause and really think through, do we have all of the pieces that we have in place from a recruiting perspective, from an onboarding perspective, from all of the other pieces that we have that operate so much in the background to support that exponential growth that you guys have so graciously funded us over the past few years. And I think that taking this fiscal year to really have a little bit of a reset for ourselves, maintain where we are, and understand how do we properly make sure that coming into fiscal year 2027, giving the financial climate that we are in, that we have built out a fiscally responsible mechanism for us to be able to meet the growth, meet the demand of the community, meet those programs that you have funded, and have us on a good trajectory to make sure that we're serving the growth of Austin and the residents of Austin and Travis County.
Thank you, Chief, for your comments.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Councilmember Alter, and then Councilmember Vela.
Thank you very much. I just want to understand from financial staff some of these items that are different from yours, just to fully. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Should we wait for that?
Yeah, why don't you wait on that?
I'm happy to do that.
Hasn't come out yet.
Then, yeah.
Councilmember Vela.
Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to, I saw the talk about the sobering center, the cut, the 125,000 cut. Again, I know the answer is there's a shortage of funds, but what was the thinking kind of behind that 125 cut? I know that it had, the original proposal came out with adding 500,000 again, which was down from the Prop Q amount, and now we're down to the 375. Just kind of thoughts on that.
Sure. My understanding is that the team from the Sobering Center made a presentation in August that indicated that their funding needs were the 375 for the year, the additional 375 for the year, not an additional $5 million for this coming year. So we made that adjustment based on that information.
Okay, an additional 500,000.
Correct.
And I was at the Sobering Center. They had a board meeting last night. The Central Health, again, just kind of for background information for ourselves and for the public, Central Health has given the Sobering Center a $600,000 contract to help with some of the what they call the holdover. In other words, folks that are taken to the Sobering Center for criminal diversion purposes, but then at the Sobering Center realize that they need much deeper substance abuse treatment, and the Sobering Center has been doing this kind of on a really ad hoc basis with very limited resources. Central Health in the past year has stepped up to provide additional resources, and now this year is really stepping up. And my concern with that cut there also would be that I don't know if that's going to be able to, I don't know if they're going to be able to operationalize the additional services without the kind of the base support from the city of Austin. So I would hate to lose kind of Central Health, or because they're such an important part of the kind of the downtown. They're such an important piece of the downtown public safety puzzle that I would hate to lose that additional benefit from the Central Health. Especially because it's just very hard to get into indigent substance abuse care. But all right, I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. All right. I think that covers the questions on the staff's recommended amendments to the proposed amendment. We will now go to amendments to the staff's recommended amendment to the proposed amended budget. Yeah, I know. So let me remind everybody where we are. We have made a main motion, and that is to, and unfortunately, the word amended gets used a lot here, but the main motion is to amend the budget that was originally passed. Council passed a budget. That budget included a tax rate that required a tax rate election. The tax rate election failed, and so we are here to amend that budget. So the original motion, the main motion, will be a motion to amend that budget. We now have an amendment to that, which is recommended by the staff, and that will be the first item we take up. The council amendments will be proposed amendments to the staff recommended amendment. And unless somebody wants to start with something else, and I'm not seeing anybody doing that, I'm going to go in this order. I'm going to first call on Councilmember Alter for his proposed amendment. I will then go to Councilmember Ellis, followed by the Mayor Pro Tem. It is my understanding, and the next in line would be Councilmember Lane, but it's my understanding that those amendments are going to be withdrawn, but I'll wait till I get to you to make sure that's the case. Then Councilmember Siegel. I have one, and then we will go back to Councilmember Alter, and then there's my understanding that there's also one by Councilmember Fuentes. And I misspoke. Yeah, well, that's what I'll do. Is I'll call them out because I know we've all been moving around, so I'll be real flexible on trying to make sure we have all those. So actually, the first amendment that I'm going to bring forward is one that is from me, and folks, you have the yellow copy, and it's labeled Item 4, Motion Sheet 2. 11/2025, and I'm going to read this so that the public.
Mr. Mayor, if I may,
Yes, ma'am.
Tap in the way that I would like to, and this is a very important thing, and I can't tap in like I would like to.
Okay.
No, I got nothing. You guys are doing it great.
Okay.
I just want to make sure that you don't miss the
I
opportunity.
will.
And I said I'm here.
I got you. Thank you. I see you, and I appreciate you reminding me. So thank you very much. So here's the order.
Mayor,
Yes.
sorry. Our subquorum has a substitute.
Well, that's why I was looking right at you.
Oh, I thought you understood that. Okay.
I did, and that's why I was looking at you when I was saying I don't see anybody asking for it. Do you want to make a substitute motion?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, then here's the order I'll go in. I will, because you've indicated you want to do that, I'm going to recognize you on a substitute motion. And so we will recognize that. We will determine whether or not the substitute motion is adopted. Members, you'll recall that if a substitute motion is made, and this will be a substitute motion, it will be a motion to replace or substitute the motion that Councilmember Siegel makes. It will be to replace or substitute the staff recommended amendment to the proposed amended budget. We have a motion and a second on that already. And the debate will be then on the substitute motion and whether we want to adopt the substitute motion. We will vote on not to adopt the substitute motion, but on whether or not it will be substituted. In other words, will it replace the staff recommended amendment? And that will be the first vote. If it is voted to replace that, then we will have it as the amendment. And if there's other amendments to that, those will also be offered up at that point in time. So Councilmember Siegel, you are recognized on a proposed substitute motion.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'm going to describe it briefly.
Sure.
A clean copy is coming downstairs because during the last break we met with city staff and they gave us a couple notes. It's largely what isn't on the dais, but there are a couple changes. The intention of this substitute motion is to fully fund some of Council's shared priorities, including EMS, EMCOT, better services at parks, and items for city employees like bad weather pay, and also to improve wildfire mitigation. So those are basically enhanced investments on the expense side. And then on the pay for side, our subquorum felt that some of the cuts were very painful, and especially to the homeless strategy office, some of the parks cuts and other cuts. And so the intention is to replace some of the pay-fors that are in the staff motion. So I will describe, as we're waiting for the document, the key changes to investments. So to staff recommendation 19, which is the emergency medical services sworn overtime to eliminate brownouts, we propose spending $3 million instead of $2.5 million to address part of what Chief Lutkertz referred to about improving our ability to recruit and retain new cadets. We also propose adding $1 million to the EMCOT expanded mobile crisis outreach team item so that it would go up to $2.086 million. And from what we understand, that would enable the program to truly operate 24/7. I have agreed to reductions into a couple of the food items to free up a little money. So reducing the food pantries item to $150,000 a year, reducing the home delivered meals to older adults to $100,000 a year, but then adding bad weather pay for essential city employees, $152,000, adding dental benefits for part-time temp employees, that's about $119,000, and then adding $1 million to wildfire mitigation that would be paid for through the Urban Forest Replenishment Fund. So those are the enhancements to the staff proposal. On the payment side, we propose reducing funding for Imagine Austin by $2 million. We propose vacancy savings for positions that have been vacant for more than 2 years of $1 million. We do propose transferring from the reserve fund $2 million. But we've removed a lot of the cuts that were in the staff recommendation. And those are apparent in the attachment that's actually now being distributed. In addition, we want to cut fewer positions from parks from the staff amendment. So instead of reducing the manager's proposal by 10 employees, we propose only cutting 5. We want to reduce the cut to rapid rehousing. So instead of cutting $1 million, we want to reduce it to a $500,000 reduction. And then there's a number of cuts that are based on the service prioritization report that are basically at the bottom of this chart. So that's the overview. I know there's going to be questions, and my peers in the subquorum can answer some of the questions more broadly. But big picture, we want to strengthen emergency response, EMS and EMCOT. We want to improve our parks maintenance. We want to take care of our city employees, and we want to improve wildfire mitigation without cutting so deeply into HSO and other essential programs.
Councilmember, before I go to people that are signed up to ask questions, I just want to make sure I'm clear on something. On the reducing funding for Imagine Austin, I heard you say that you reduced that by $2 million. One of the versions that I had before had it at $2 million. The version I was just handed has it at $1 million. What number are we dealing with?
Okay, my apologies. I think at the manager's recommendation, we have removed that to reduce that to $1 million. Thank you for the clarification.
All right, Councilmember Alter.
Thank you very much. I wanted to just ask financial staff to get some clarity on a couple of these new items. I'm just going to start towards the top. The wildfire mitigation, with those dollars, are those funding contracted positions, or would those fund new FTEs to do this work? I see Chief Baker working his way down.
Joel Baker, Austin Fire Chief. Councilmember Alter, that wildfire mitigation, I have a list here to start with. It is to fund advertisement for billboards, for various advertisement initiative to help us identify wildfire hazards in various communities, as well as various softwares. Our annual fire aside software, along with scheduling software to help us schedule WUI inspection, as well as the structural initiative zone evaluation. Evaluation. Also provide public safety servers. It's a central database sharing platform for awareness for first responder agencies, various agencies that we use. Also to help us get fire shelters and PATs, which is an NFPA 1977 compliance for regional wildfire policy that we should have in place. It's also to help us with WUI code educational seminars to educate the community and our other stakeholders about WUI code, and also for Embers initiative zone compliance. That's what the funding is for.
Okay. So I just want to make sure that we're not using one-time dollars that then next fiscal year we would have an ongoing need for these expenses.
That's correct. It's not for FTEs or anything of that nature.
Okay. Thank you very much. That's very helpful. Appreciate it. Moving on to Imagine Austin. The reduction is listed in ongoing. Should that be one time because it's a one-time CIP transfer?
Yes, those are one-time funds.
Okay. Just want to confirm. On the vacancy savings, is my understanding, since this is this would be up to the manager to implement, but essentially, in practicality, what this would look like is if a position, let's say right now when you calculate your vacancy savings, you think that a position might be open for 3 months, and so you fund 9 months worth. But to do this, you might say, all right, we're going to hold that position open for 5 or 6 months and then fill it so that there is a savings achieved in various departments. Is that a kind of accurate way how this would be implemented?
Yes, that is accurate.
Okay. And that would be, as it's mentioned, citywide. There's no requirement in this that it would be for a specific department.
It's listed as citywide. The savings from any vacancies in other funds, enterprise funds, cannot be used for the general fund. So we would primarily look at general fund and support services fund.
Okay. Yeah, please.
With the stipulation for vacant positions that have been vacant for more than 2 years.
I see the manager shaking his head. So
Manager?
Thank you. So that, I think, is what the notes say, and I think the intention was to look at vacancies that were 2 years or more. And as I think I described in conversation, those types of vacancies that are 2 years or more are already accounted for in our normal salary savings or vacancy savings as we look annually, because that is either a choice and or what has consistently happened given the types of positions and the difficulty to fill them. Those costs, as I understand it, are already accounted for, no different than your example, Councilmember Alter, of something that normally takes 2 months to fill that we may actually want to extend to 5. What's calculated in the current vacancy savings would probably be the normative 3 months. So as I've indicated, the norm and how that's grossed up across the city, whether general fund or not, is the number I think Ed kind of walked through an example of. And so my understanding and my intention would be something different, as you described, would have to happen to realize additional savings that are not currently counted for, and that would mean to extend the length of what is normal, whether it's always been vacant for 2 years or if there's one that's been vacant for 1 year, that would have already been accounted for in our overall number. So those numbers would already exist. So again, I think the note says that, but in practical and reality, we'd have to do something different than what we started with and what we normally see.
Okay. All right. Then I see this transfer from the reserves. That's also put in ongoing. Should that be one time?
Yes, that would be a one-time transfer.
Okay. Going down, these are all in the existing. 500,000 reduction for rapid we covered. Reduction in parks we covered. Third-party contracts. Okay. This Austin Human Resources Commodities and Contractuals. Can you just help us understand what this is?
I'm going to ask Susan Sins to come up from the Human Resources Department.
Rebecca Kennedy with the Human Resources Department. We've looked at our contractual and commodities budget and identified potentially $75,000. It's mainly coming from printing costs. We'd be looking at reducing our computer software budget, our postage budget, office furnishings. So we would be looking at just the things that aren't already committed for contracts and seeing what we could pull for the $75,000.
And would those be ongoing savings or one time?
It appears to be an ongoing, so it would be looks like a permanent reduction to our budget.
Okay. Okay. Very good. And then the cost savings from reducing contracts for facility maintenance offset by increased in-house staffing for $441,000 facility management services. Can Ed or somebody speak to what this is?
Good evening, Gerald Alexander, Director of Austin Facility Management. The impact of that would be 5 to almost 10% reduction in some of the service in our contracts. And also it'll impact several different disciplines like HVAC, plumbing, electrical, landscaping, custodial, security. With that said, then we have to prioritize which things we don't do. And I'll give you an example. Like right now we're doing the navigation center. That's security. That's a security, so that's contracted. Landscaping. We do landscaping for the fire department. I don't have landscapers, right? So those are the things that will impact going forward.
And when it mentions that it's offset by increased in-house staffing, what I hear you saying is these are just maintenance, facilities maintenance that we just won't contract for to achieve the savings.
Well,
but
I don't have landscaping. I don't have in-house landscaping.
Okay.
Right, so I have to contract that.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. On the financial services, reduce the budget contractuals in the accounting and financial reporting program. Can someone speak to that?
Kim Olivares, Director of Austin Financial Services. So the amount, there was this the staff recommended reduction in our IT services that is maintained in this subquorum proposal. That would impact a number of our current and temporary employees, decreasing hours on the projects that they're supporting. It also impacts some of our consulting services for IT needs. It also impacts the processes. There's an effort to help resolve some, I don't want to get too like inside baseball in the weeds on terminology, but some various processes that support all of our financial systems, including most recently launched Workday to help ensure that data is flowing between those systems. So it's overall, it has a potential impact on our ability to continue to support our financial systems. When it comes to the support services, it does provide, would probably decrease hours by about 15% amongst various temporary employees that we use. It's also would impact various funds that we have set aside for consulting services and legal services that we use to support across the organization. So it's not necessarily aligned to a single department. It's very often that a department will encounter a situation where they need legal or other consulting services to help them handle whatever that situation may be, and they don't have the funds to do that. And financial services often steps in to provide those funds to help them carry them through. So that would definitely impact our ability to continue to support departments across the org.
Okay. So that,
and
that
then,
includes
I'm sorry.
that 275, the support.
So that was the 275 on the accounting, and I forgot to cover the accounting and reporting part. I apologize for that. That includes budget we have for consultants that assist the review of our electric and gas rate cases. It would also reduce budgets for legal services related to review of franchise agreements. And there was also $170,000 in rent included in there that we used to help, that was already removed from our budget, that we used to help, similar to those other consulting contracts that I noted that were used to help other departments across the org. That is also a similar situation.
Okay. I meant to, thank you very much, Ms. Olivares. I meant to ask it up top on the Urban Forest Replenishment Fund. Can someone just remind me how much is in that fund currently? How much would this million impact? And there's not a you question.
I believe it's around 11.
11, okay.
I think so. You can double check my math on that.
And I guess while that is being looked up, I just want to confirm that this $1 million would otherwise at some point be used for tree planting. Is that correct? That's what this fund is?
Yes, let me look up the language from the authorizing resolution.
Okay.
And I'm also happy to provide some clarification as well, since it was one that I advocated for.
I'm open to
Please go ahead if you have
wherever it comes from.
Yes.
Our understanding is that this fund is an allowed use for wildfire mitigation, specifically in and around pruning, brush cleanup, things like that. So I don't know if we just need a clarification from staff. I knew that there was some equipment costs, like software, to make sure that wildfire risk is being assessed and addressed in a strategic manner. But my understanding was it was more about debris and pruning rather than educational materials, or maybe including educational materials. I'm not sure.
The criteria manual states that payments to the Urban Forest Replenishment Fund may be used for off-site tree planting and maintenance, promoting tree care and preservation, urban forest conservation, and enforcement of city tree protection and mitigation regulations.
Okay. Well, thank you for that clarification. This one's tough. The goal, I share the goal. I think we need more for EMS. I think we need more for MCOT, and less harm to homelessness. I do have concern of moving $3 million or funding $3 million of this with one-time revenue, which means next year we have to figure out how to plug that hole plus the holes that we are going to have. That being said, there's a reason why we have a reserve fund, and it's for situations like this. Yeah, I'm going to have to think about it, but I appreciate the clarification. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Can I ask a question? And the folks sponsoring this, I just want to make sure I understand, but I'll also ask the financial staff. In looking at, for example, reduced funding for facilities management services, and it has an ongoing general fund ongoing expenditure reduction of $100,000, but then it takes from enterprise funds. Would you explain how that works?
Sorry, which number was it?
Well, just I'm using an example. There are a couple of them in here. For example, if you look down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines, it says reduce funding for facilities management services, third-party contract for One Texas Center.
Yep. Okay. So what we call our support service and internal services departments, they provide services to other city departments.
All of them.
And to recoup their costs, we have cost allocation models. So their costs are allocated out not just to the general fund, but to enterprise departments as well. And so what you see on the spreadsheet is reflecting that on average about half of the costs of these departments are provided by the general fund.
So about half, and then you double that for the enterprise fund.
That's correct. Sorry, the other half would come from the enterprise fund. But
it takes
it's double because it's reflecting the impact that would take place in the support services fund or that department's other fund, a facilities management fund or information technology fund. So the full impact to that department will be twice the impact to the general fund.
I see. Okay, thank you. Sure, Member Pro Tem.
Certainly, because I know in the amendment that I brought forward that was specific to EMS overtime, we worked with y'all on the formula that is used to better pull out the portion that impacted the general fund. We realize that many of these services go across general fund and enterprise departments, but the amendment we are bringing forward, the total amount was really focused on impacts to the general fund. And so I would say, for any of these services that go across to the enterprise, and staff would have to share with this context, if there is a rationale why we should keep the enterprise portion or the funding to continue the enterprise work, I would be totally open to that. We really focused in on general fund impact, given where we're at right now with the general fund budget, but certainly recognize that there is a formula that can be utilized to extract the specific impact amount to the general fund overall.
Manager.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. And so it sounds simple, and I think Eric tried to describe it, and I was trying to share with the mayor at least my understanding of it. And so, as Eric said, the internal service funds provide service to everyone. And so whether it's one employee, 2, or 10, unless the enterprise fund is paying for it specifically, because it is solely related to them. In this case, for these types of services, it's basically a shared cost. So in theory, the simple way to look at it is, in order for the general fund to inure, let's say, $100,000, and let's say it's a position, as Darrell talked about, or contractual services. So if each position was worth $100,000, if you just cut one position, you would only get $50,000 for the general fund and $50,000 spread across the enterprise fund. So in order to get $100,000 from the general fund, you've got to cut twice as many positions. So you'd have to cut 2 to basically get a full $100,000. And so then again, that would be 1 position for the general fund and 1 for the other. And so I don't think we can tease it out the way you're describing it, because I don't think those positions are funded like that.
The distinction here being is that we paid special care and attention to not impact full-time employees. So these services are contracts either for consultant work or other type of third-party services. So, how does that interplay work when it's that type of service?
Correct. I'm giving you an example of the funding mechanism. So example is if they spend $500,000 on contracts, if you wanted to save $500,000 in the general fund, you'd need to cut $1 million because only $500,000 of that was coming from the general fund, and the other $500,000 is coming from the other funds. And so that's why you see for the $150,000, the enterprise fund related costs are $300,000, which is double that amount. And so we were just trying to explain and share with the mayor why there were costs showing up in the other funds is because you have to cut that amount to get to the $150,000. The resulting impact is the other costs that got you that are inured and would actually show up in the enterprise funds, I think.
Yeah, I guess I need more help on this because some of the services, for example, maintenance facility, if it's across multiple departments and it's across enterprise funds, if that contract amount went from $10,000 down to, let's say, $3,000 because we're keeping just the enterprise fund, wouldn't we just reduce the scope of service to account for the work that's related to enterprise-related needs and functions?
And I'll defer to Carrie and them if, in fact, it's more complicated than I'm explaining. I was giving you a general answer for how and why it shows up in other funds. If it's the position, it functions like that. Again, I'll defer to where the contract costs are and where we spend the dollars.
So you see the savings based on the reduction of the function. So it's budgeted in the support services fund. And when you make that reduction in the support services fund, then that fund goes down $300,000. But the impact of that $300,000 savings in that fund is only $150,000 savings to the general fund. And because of how the allocations work, it is not only in very specific spaces is it where the cost of a service provided by internal services that it goes directly to the enterprise department. For example, financial services has procurement staff embedded into various enterprise departments. That function is charged directly back to that enterprise. However, all the other procurement staff in financial services is allocated across the city because they support across the city. So if there was a reduction in procurement, it would be a $300,000 reduction in financial services, but it would be $150,000 savings to the general fund.
Can I ask?
Well, it sounds like certainly the impact would be greater in what we're proposing here. But colleagues, we really centered in on general fund impacts because we wanted to pay special care to the balance of one-time costs and ongoing versus what we would need to pull from reserves. So, if anything, this just indicates how we're all learning more about the nuances with our contracts and services across general fund and enterprise. I wish we would have had more time to unpack this with city staff. This amendment was put forth as in response to the city's amendment, which we were delivered late last night. So we're working with 12 hours of work time here to develop this, and we're still working through the differences. And so just wanted to offer that context for everyone.
Can I ask a question, Mayor Pro Tem, real quick, and then but when you were talking about contractual services, I want to make sure that I understand the last item on page 1 of this, reduce funding and financial services for IT staffing and office relocation services. That doesn't include contractual, right?
Right.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I thought. I wanted to make sure I didn't mishear. and before I go to Councilmember Ellis and then Councilmember Alter, I have another question. I want to make sure I understood what the manager was saying when he was talking about vacancy savings and how that works. Because you said we would have to do something different. Because, and let me say this back and see if I'm getting it right. Currently, the way this is worded is it would be to leverage vacancy savings for positions that have been vacant for more than 2 years. But as I've understood what you've been saying this week, if a position's been vacant for that period of time, we're already not putting money into that, so there's not a savings there if you say we're going to try to do it from vacancy savings for something that's 2 years. Is that correct?
Yes, we already adjust the vacancy savings requirement, knowing that there's a long-term vacancy that we have.
So if we were going to have vacancy savings, it would have to be for positions that have been open, as the manager seemed to indicate, 2 months, 3 months, something like that. And manager, you indicated you would have to do something different. I'm not sure I completely understood what it is you would have to do different to our, and my question has two parts to it. What does that do to our staffing of people if we've got a 2 month or 3 month and we have to extend that? And what does that do to our workforce and our ability to recruit people for that workforce? And what does it do to the work that's being done in those areas?
So speaking specifically to what would need to change or what would be different, and thank you for asking the question. We would have to, as I gave the example, request that in some cases we review and touch and understand any hiring, basically a hiring freeze, a chill for positions or a justification for why you want to fill it, and extend the normal time that we typically have granted and or we assume for that vacancy to exist. And so again, as an example, if in fact the normal turnaround time is 2 or 3 months, we may say, okay, but I need you to hold that for 2 additional months. Or, you know what, you need to go ahead and fill that because it's mission critical. And we do that on a selective basis, which again, we would do just to ensure that we could, I guess, stretch to the number at some point throughout the year. And so it would mean an intervention would have to happen, and it may show up differently depending on the size of the department, what the position was. We just have to make sure that we're working with HR and the directors to understand and make the request right up front that we do something different and, create processes that would allow us to make sure we could ensure that we are doing something different and we're controlling the speed at which things get filled. So again, we would do our best to try to not have any negative impacts on operations. It would just mean more people doing more longer because there's not a person next to them and or a function that's being done by someone else.
Got it. Okay. Councilmember Ellis and then Councilmember Alter.
I think my questions have been answered with this conversation. I just wanted to make sure if we have things that are in this service prioritization that we're selecting from, that we're getting the full picture and understanding the full potential impact of some of these changes. And if there's anything that's being shared between enterprise funds that could be better allocated with enterprise funds, I think that's a conversation I'm willing to have.
Fair enough. Councilmember Alter.
I just wanted to further understand a little bit, and I get that, like, let's say it's Workday, right, where we share that cost. It's a contract across enterprise and general fund, and so that's a shared cost. But I'm going to oversimplify this, but let's say for facilities management, they manage 5 general fund buildings, and they manage 5 enterprise buildings. Are we unable to say, just don't manage the general fund buildings and only have a general fund impact? Or does it have to be, if we want to have the general fund savings, you can't manage all 10 of those buildings?
So a lot of our administrative facilities for sure are multi-departmental, so that adds a wrinkle to what you're saying. But we certainly could just not cut the grass at our fire stations and save money just in the general fund.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Councilmember Duchin.
Thank you, Mayor. I've got a couple of questions about a couple of different line items here. Is there somebody from planning I can talk to understand what the current sunk cost is of our investment in the Imagine Austin update? Or perhaps budget office knows offhand.
Good evening, Laura Middleton Pratt, Director of Austin Planning. And so the question is just how much have we spent to date?
Yeah, maybe you can just even provide a bit of context for what this item, what the total cost of this item is. There's a $1 million reduction that's been presented here. So I'm just curious, how does this, what sort of final product will we wind up with this $1 million reduction, and what's sort of the sunk cost to date of investing in the total cost of the plan update?
Sure. So in the FY24 budget, Council approved the $3 million. And so with a $1 million reduction, we would go back and just rescope the project. We have a number of community engagement processes that we're looking forward to executing that respond to a future places map process. We have a temporary staff that we are currently covering with the CIP funding, and a reduction just means a rescope. And so we would work with the consultant to make sure that we had a viable implementation plan of the Imagine Austin update, and something that the residents could be proud of and that council could be proud of. We do think that we could make the project work, make the update work with a $2 million budget line item.
Okay, that's the main thing I was working to, that we still get a product that sounds like it would be valuable to your team, but also be able to save what would be essentially a one-time expense here.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Then the next question I've got is regarding the economic development contracts, the third-party economic development contracts. This is where I believe there's a change from reducing these from $110,000 to almost $500,000. And I'd like to try and understand if the purpose of the economic development team is to help essentially create the economic engine for the city, to provide future opportunities for potentially sales tax, property tax, construction, whatever those things are that help us project out in the future to have the resources we need. What's the practical implication of taking this down another couple $100,000?
Councilmember, thank you for the question. Anthony Segura, Interim Director for Economic Development Department. The contracts that we are bringing down are the ones that we currently have with Opportunity Austin and the DECA Chambers. And so they're partners with us in recruiting, but we would still be able to do our own in-house recruiting that we currently do and still work with them. It's just these contracts would be, especially with Opportunity Austin, reduced.
Well, I'm confused because I don't want to. It sounds like the impact would be negligible, is what you're saying, on the actual work that the contracts would otherwise produce.
Opportunity Austin still does recruitments, of course, within the region. So I'm not going to be able to say that it would negatively impact the department or the city, because they're still going to do the recruitments. We just may not have as strong of a partnership as we had with them beforehand.
Okay. Is that the only thing out of the, it looks like 3 different items here that are listed, would be adversely impacted?
Correct. We would reduce the chambers, or the DECA chambers contracts by a small portion, but they would still be working with us on our business and retention goals that we have set out for them. So it would be a slight impact.
Okay. All right. Thank you for clarifying that. The last questions I've got are about the Urban Forest Replenishment Fund. I think Councilmember Ellis said that we've got about $11 million in that fund. what is the mechanism for replenishing the replenishment fund?
I'm sorry, I was just clarifying with staff on, excuse me, the economic development reduction. It also includes the creative space assistant program reduction, and that would be an ACME conversation. That is no longer in economic development. That was moved over to ACME, so I'm going to ask the director to come down.
That'll be helpful. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Angela Means. I'm the director of ACME. The reduction that you see for our Creative Space Assistance Program would reduce our current program, which is the fiscal year 2026, by $500,000, leaving $1.1 million to be able to award around 18 spaces this year. The elimination would eliminate the program moving forward if it is a permanent reduction.
Thank you. So there's a big difference between if it's a one-time or if it's a permanent, because that would spell the end of the program.
That's correct.
Okay. And in terms of, help me in a very layman way understand what's the implication of not awarding those, of reducing the awards.
So this is for our creative spaces, and it is a part of our community where we provide spaces for our creatives throughout Austin. If we did not reduce, we would still just reward 26. So it's an approximately 7 spaces that will not receive funding this year. So we would be in a good place at least to be able to still provide 18 awards this year. The applications are open at this time, and we know that it is a priority for our creatives. So we will work with them this year as we go through this process.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. I'd like to just touch on the Urban Forest Replenishment Fund. I don't know if we've got an answer yet for...
Sure. The source of revenue is developer mitigation fees. So when they do a project that requires taking down trees, they pay into the fund so that we can replenish those trees somewhere else.
And do you know roughly how much goes into that fund a year?
I can very shortly.
Okay. I know that last year it looks like we increased our output of that fund from about, through the resolution, to like a little over $1 million. And it looks like this would be another year we'd spend about $1 million out of that fund. So there's a question to say that I'm just curious about how quickly we're putting money in versus how quickly we're taking money out. So as you're getting to that, my next question about that fund is just to making sure that it's how restrictive the use cases are for that fund. I heard Chief Baker say, for instance, we might put up billboards, which might be a marketing or advertising expense. I'm wondering, and the use cases that are listed there that we talked about, it was off-site tree planting and maintenance, promoting tree care and preservation, urban forest conservation, and enforcing the city tree protection and mitigation regulations. So I would assume that we do have billboards. It has to be about one of those 4 items. Is that a correct understanding, or do we have more latitude than I think here?
Councilmember Keith Mars, Interim Director, Austin Development Services. I can help with some of the historical context of the fund. That fund for many years was managed by the Development Services Department, Austin Development Services. So the fund is a development exaction when trees are removed and they can't be planted back. A fee in lieu is paid into that. That fund is volatile because it's dependent heavily on economic activity. That fund did have a large influx of funding during kind of peak development here in the past 5 years. We have seen those monies come down. There is a spend plan for that fund. It's currently managed still within the city, and we work together with Office of Climate Resiliency to get you the fund balance. Now, to answer your question about how the fund is used, so rules establish that there has to be a nexus of how those monies are spent, and that's why it needs to be there's proportionality. It also has a nexus between the tree being removed or trees being removed, and then a public good around trees. That's why you see things like tree planting wildland or wildfire mitigation, land management, tree care, as long as there is a nexus between those things, and we have used the fund for those purposes over time.
Okay, so it sounds like it's a bit more broader than I read it out to be.
Than just tree planting, that's correct, sir.
Okay, got it. Well, that's all the questions I've got, so I'll look for whatever whenever you're able to share the update for the net in and out for that fund.
So the development fee revenue budget is 3.5 million in FY26, with planned total requirements of 5.8 million. But as was just shared, it does fluctuate with development. So in 2024, those fees are about 7.8 million.
Got it. Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Alter.
I was wondering if I could get Ms. Milton Pratt back.
Bless you.
And I might have just missed this. I was listening in the back as I was running back and forth. I heard Councilmember Duchin ask how much money had been spent to date. Was there a number?
It's roughly 140,000 to date.
Okay.
The Imagine Austin resolution was just passed a few months ago.
Sure.
And so now we're ramping up with our consultant.
And we, I assume, have a signed contract that would envision some of the other spending, but are we on the hook today for any money over 140,000? Like if we said we're going to wait a year or two, do we have to pay any more money out the door, or are we 140 in and that's where we are today?
We've encumbered 2.24 million, but
Well, I understand we have contracts for that, but are those for things that if we decide not to do,
correct,
we don't have to pay? So if we canceled the contract today, can anyone come to us and say, you owe us $200,000 or $300,000?
Assistant Director Andrea Bates has additional information.
Okay.
Yes, sir. We have recently started working with a consultant, and I do not think we have received an initial invoice. And so the amount of money spent to date reflects mostly the pre-planning. We have entered into a contract and obligated a significant portion of the CIP funds, and the consultants have produced some billable hours that I think we haven't been invoiced for yet. And so if you were looking at what, we have perhaps are most obligated to spend, there would be some addition above the 140.
But probably in like $100,000, not hundreds of
It
thousands.
would be a small, relatively small amount, yes, sir.
Okay, I just want to understand what the actual spend to date is. And I see the Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, because, Councilmember Alter brings up a good point. He's asking if we have a clause in our contract that allows us to back out of a previously authorized contract. I would assume so, because how else are we going to trim 10% off of all of our social service contracts? So if you can please confirm for the record.
I would have to defer to the Budget Office for their expertise, or Financial Services for the expertise on how contracts are normally drafted.
Most of our contracts do have a clause where we can, based on budget availability, make or back out of those contracts. I think we have to look at the individuality of them, but there's probably something in that contract that would allow us to reduce the amount of the contract. I think what Andrea was indicating was there has been some work done, not saying that they can't reduce the authority for that contract, but we would be on the hook to pay for whatever has been done thus far.
Thank you.
But it sounds like it's mostly service contracts. So if we stopped asking them to bill or to do anything, they would stop billing us, and that would be just like a lawyer. All right, I just wanted to get clarification.
All right, members. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. Colleagues wanted to speak to the amendment that's brought forward by our subquorum, Councilmembers Ellis, Velasquez, and Siegel. This amendment, it was drafted, as you all are very well aware, in response to the staff amendment that is before us. And so there are a few areas in which we're still learning and working out with staff based on the feedback that they're provided. But I mean, I think this really gets to the point of our amendment, was that we recognize that we've all shared out our shared priorities, and we're pleased to see that commitment in ensuring that we're able to improve and better our emergency services. But what we were not comfortable with as it relates to the staff amendment was the areas in which it sought to reduce and cut to be able to fund those shared priorities. So our amendment really is focused on looking at other areas that we can pull dollars for in order to improve our emergency response, to add more funding for parks, to add more funding for homelessness, as well as adding for wildfire mitigation and including key benefits for city workers. This also preserves the sobering center reduction that was made in the staff amendment and staves off the reductions in rental assistance and rapid rehousing. And again, this really is just about finding other areas for us to cut. Certainly, we're having a really great conversation with staff on the impacts of what that might mean. We're open to further conversations and deliberations on how we might best reallocate our funds to ensure that we're able to fund our high priority services. But I just wanted to add some context to the rationale behind our amendment.
Thank you. Councilmember Vela.
Thank you, Mayor. My sense right now would be to try and merge the substitute amendment with the staff. I kind of would like to, and again, I'm just a suggestion, but to try and kind of coordinate them. I mean, there's some cuts that I don't think are really feasible, and there's some other sources of some cuts that they left on the table that were in the staff. You know, in other words, I don't think we're if again, maybe give staff a little bit of time to kind of work through both documents and come back with a kind of a consolidated proposal. I mean, I hate to pause that, but just to, it's tough to track all the different changes here from our perspective on the dais right now. And I feel like if we took a little bit of time to kind of merge the documents and come up with kind of a version 2 kind of staff suggestion, we might be able to get there and get this done tonight.
Councilmember Ellis.
I just wanted to flag that our spreadsheet includes all of the categories that staff had, so there's nothing that they had proposed putting in that we reduced. We actually increased a number of those financial commitments and then found other ways to come up with those cuts that weren't necessarily cutting into the park land and grounds maintenance as much. You know, there's some things we left on the table, and there's some things we heard from the community they would prefer not to have cut. So ours kind of does absorb staff's original proposal.
You probably ought to respond to that.
Thank you. And I think just for clarity, and I think the work that staff has done, and obviously has shared multiple times, provided to you late last night, just to give some context. When we first met and shared our first recommendation, and particularly as it relates to this characterization of what we cut, the first amended budget was a cut that brought us down from $109 million back to the original baseline where we kind of started. And then based on our best understandings, I believe, of what was prioritized in the TRE, we lifted up and pushed forward several items identified, particularly around homelessness, as well as parks, and carved out from that additional amended budget, an additional $7.2 million in those categories that we believe was what we heard and thought through priority, without a lot of conversation with council, so clearly noted. Upon sharing that, I think we heard from council, and I think whether it was the mayor and others, around what we should have taken away from the conversation and where your priorities were as a council, particularly around homelessness, notwithstanding being very specific in the communication about we wanted to do some things with tooth or non-congregate shelters in permanent supportive housing, we walked away with the priorities being homelessness and EMS. I wish we would have heard, obviously, Parks and Recreation. It was an assumption that since we didn't hear, and I asked the question a couple of times, did they articulate that they wanted to do more in parks in this second iteration? But it was not put forward as a priority. So therefore, that's why those resources, as well as, quite honestly, the homeless dollars of our first amended budget in those key areas, we thought that if we were going to find additional monies, staff's priority or council's priorities were the two bigger areas that you illuminated, which were the tooth shelter and permanent supportive housing, and may not have wanted to do those other things. So that's why we reallocated those to those, not stating if council would have said, hey, we want to keep those, but we want you to go and find additional resources for these other things in homelessness, and don't touch these because we like those. That's the direction we would have went. We didn't get that guidance. So I just wanted to clarify the context of that and would say going forward, if there is a clear articulation of what your priorities are and or anything we might lay out, we would love to just hear them that way so that we can then accommodate and find ways to meet what you want to get. But I just want to give some color to why that happened. And again, those things were important to us, but we believe that they were less important than trying to find sustainable revenues for the two bigger non-congregate shelters. And so again, I just wanted to say that because that was our intention. It wasn't to remove what we had added. It was really to try to get where y'all wanted to get. So I just wanted to say that just from staff's perspective, that I think David has done a great job of sharing with you the priorities. And those things are important. But again, as we talked when we started this whole conversation, I think we were under the reality of we've got to do things different. We've got to find ways to make some tougher choices and to continue to do everything that comes before us without any sacrifice in some respect. We took the prioritization that council shared with us last week as that was your statement of that's what you really wanted to do, and we got to make tough choices, and we pivoted. And so again, if we misread that, we will apologize in advance for thinking that. And so the clarification today has left us with you wanted to do both. And so I think this amendment and is suggested giving us some time to reconcile them together and figure out where we come back. I think that might be appropriate now that we understand that you wanted to do in addition to what we had initially recommended.
Members, this is the key question, and it seems to me that if we get past this question, then everything else ought to move pretty quickly at that point, because a lot of amendments probably don't matter anymore. If there's not an objection to at least the effort to correspond these, if there's no objection to that, what my recommendation would be is that we give at least an hour for our staff to look at this and report back to us. Which would mean, let's say 8 o'clock, because then I think we would be in a position, if in fact this can be worked that way in a way that the council also agrees, then it would make sense. So unless there's objection, the council will be in recess until.
I did want to comment in response to the
Okay,
manager.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, and thank you, Manager, for sharing your thoughts and feedback. And it just really illuminates that this is the first time we're navigating this second type of budget process, and we're learning as we go through it. And it's helpful for us to have these conversations with the dais because it really underscores the value of us affirming what we agree with and what staff is bringing forward and providing more direction and guidance on where we would have liked to have seen the cuts come from. And I certainly recognize that was an area that I, as a council member, can provide more of that on the dais as part of these public deliberations and just how important they are to the overall process. But just want to share my appreciation for you and your team. We recognize all of the hard work they all are doing and know that us, going through this process of cutting and reallocating and wanting to ensure that our priorities get the funding they deserve is just that. It's just part of us deliberating, and just want to, again, share my gratitude for all the work they all are doing.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Councilmember Harper Madison, and could we change the screen so that we don't have the flow chart up there?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, because that means I can't see you guys.
Yeah.
I am, just, I'm so tired. And I know, and I want you to offer me this moment of personal privilege. You didn't tell anybody that I have this terrible injury, but I'm doing everything I can to sit up. You guys, we cannot sit here all night.
No, we're not going to, and that's why I say we'll be done by 10 o'clock tonight, no matter what. And but my hope is that if we take an hour, we come up with a better result and one that is of greater consensus.
Mr. Mayor, with all due respect, if I may, you are the smartest person on that dais, and you've been telling us all night.
I couldn't win that vote.
Listen, don't play with me. I got a tailbone injury. So, what I will say is, we're not going to get this done tonight. So, we're going to all respect your professional opinion. This is not happening tonight. So, you are, as a chair, as a mayor, please just call it.
Well, I apologize to you, council member. I very much would like to be able to do that, but I want us to try to get it done in a way that there's greater consensus by the council, that respects the work that has gone in by all the members of the council and by our professional staff. And I think the better part of valor is to give them an hour to see what they're able to do. And if we decide we can't do it, we'll come back tomorrow. But I want us to at least try to get there. One of the ways that will be helpful in that regard is members. If you have an amendment that you were planning on offering, and you've been listening at all to this discussion, you will know whether your amendment is likely to be needed or wanted or necessary. So keep that in mind, because you may come back and ask me to pull your amendment, and that would speed things up as well. So, Councilmember Harper Madison, I appreciate very much the situation you're in, but I'm going to try to get us to a vote tonight. With that,
I appreciate you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. With that being said, we are in recess until 8 o'clock. It is 7:01 p.m. Folks, we're waiting on some things to be printed out, and we'll be back. Just so that you'll know what's going to happen, Councilmember Siegel had the substitute motion, although he explained his motion and we discussed it and debated it and did what you witnessed, but he never made a motion. And so there's not a motion on the floor to substitute. I will tell you that what I anticipate is going to happen is that we are going to have a proposed substitute motion. It will be a staff substitute, but we will make a motion to utilize version 2 of the staff amendment, and it'll be a substitute motion to the motion that we've been looking to amend. So just now, I know y'all were sitting there wondering what we were going to do, so I thought I'd just share that with you. So now debate that. Yeah, and I will recognize Councilmember Siegel so he can make a motion. I'm told by the manager they're printing it right now. I anticipate somebody's going to disagree with what I just said, so you feel free to come up. Good evening, everybody. It's 8:38, and on November 20th, 2025, and I'll call the Austin City Council back to order. When we took a break, the break that we took was we had been discussing a potential substitute motion that was laid out by Councilmember Siegel, and there had been discussion and questions and some debate on that. Councilmember Siegel never made a motion to substitute that amendment for the staff amendment that was brought forward. So we don't have to withdraw or table any motion in that regard. We now have in front of us an Exhibit E, which is labeled Exhibit E, Final Staff Amendments as of 8 p.m., 11:20 at the bottom of the page. Members, it is a 5-page document, and I'm going to ask the financial staff to describe this for us. When we broke, it was they were going back to work on whether they were able to synchronize or correspond the potential substitute motion that had been laid out with their proposed amendment. And so I'll turn it over to the director to give us a description.
Thank you, Mayor. Staff heard you all loud and clear, and we went back and worked on how do we combine the two amendments into one that shows and funds the priorities that this council has. And I will walk through the changes that are in front of us. The first is the decrease in the HSO general fund by $900,000 in order to fund those items through the Hope Fund by $900,000. We will be reducing the original reduction from the Sobering Center so that the Sobering Center is fully funded at $2 million. At $3 million. Then we are going to reduce the job training, the reentry workforce training at $500,000, reducing rapid rehousing by $500,000, reducing funding for bridge shelters by $250,000, reducing landlord engagement by $600,000, reducing our homeless diversion by $500,000, delaying the 5 new positions in forensic science, fully funding 15 positions for park ground maintenance, reducing the funding for parks athletic fields at $375,000. We're going to be reducing the funding for third-party contracts for facilities management at $100,000, as well as reductions to financial services for IT staffing at $150,000. The general fund transfer to the Housing Trust Fund will be reduced at $1.1 million. And then there will be a reduction in the Housing Trust Fund for $539,000 to eliminate the tax and estate planning pilot. We will then reduce the Housing Trust Fund $600,000 for the emergency rental assistance, giving that funding $3 million total funding for fiscal year 26. Reduce the third-party contracts in economics development, a total $220,000 reduction for a $110,000 impact to the general fund. We will reduce the planning CIP. This is one-time funding for $1.5 million into the general fund. Also reducing human resources, commodity, and contractuals for $75,000. The total reduction is $151,000. Facilities management will have a reduction in their contracts for facilities management, total $882,000 for a $441,000 reduction to the general fund. And then contractuals and commodities and financial services at $270,000 to the support services fund, impacting the general fund $135,000. $550,000 in financial services reductions for support services, with a general fund impact of $275,000. We'll be removing the planning position, one planning positions for $100,000 savings to the general fund. Contracts across the general fund, so we're looking at our software contracts, the work that we plan on, the savings we can anticipate receiving through our IT optimization of $406,000. That would allow for funding for non-congregate shelters at $2.9 million. Permanent supportive housing, $202,000 in the general fund, and $2 million in the housing trust fund. Emergency EMS overtime at $3 million. MCOT, $2.1 million. Child advocacy at $120,000. Food pantries, $150,000, as well as home delivery meals for older adults, $100,000. Bad weather pay stipend, $152,000. Dental benefits for part-time temporary employees, $120,000. Emergency vet services, $100,000. We will be increasing the funding for wildfire through the fire urban forest replenishment fund at $1 million. And then there's the staff amendment to reduce D5 budget by $71,000 to increase the auditor's office by that same amount. Those are the staff amendments that we are recommending for the fiscal year 26 budget.
Members, Councilmember Velasquez, do you have a question? Okay, any questions? Yes, Councilmember Alter.
Can I just confirm a staff recommendation 17 is the 1.5 one-time revenue?
That is one time.
Okay, thank you.
And I'd like to confirm that the workforce savings that we saw in the potential substitute motion that we discussed, that's not included in here as part of any reductions or savings.
Say that again.
Yeah, salary savings. I called it workforce. I apologize.
The vacancy savings reduction
Vacancy savings.
is not in this amendment.
Okay, very good. Councilmember Siegel, do you have a motion?
Yes, I move this as the base amendment.
Okay, Councilmember Siegel has moved to substitute what is labeled Exhibit E, final staff amendments as of 8 p.m. on November 20th, to substitute this for the staff recommended amendment to the main motion. The Mayor Pro Tem seconds that. Discussion with regard to the motion to substitute, and the vote will only be on whether or not we replace, whether or not we use this to substitute staff's Exhibit D with this Exhibit E. Is there discussion? Without objection, the motion to substitute is adopted. Members, that now means that Exhibit E is the motion, is the amendment to this, and I know this sounds crazy, but it is the amendment to the proposed amended budget. Now, we have a couple of amendments that are really direction. I don't believe we have any other amendments that deal in numbers as such, but we do have budget direction. The first one we will take up is labeled Item 4, Motion Sheet 1 for Mayor Kirk Watson, November 20th, 2025, and that is related to the efficient and effective use of government contracts and direction to the city manager to determine a uniform process for procuring social service contracts and city distributed grants. I'm not going to read the whole thing. This was laid out, I guess, yesterday. I will move approval of Watson Amendment Number 1. It's seconded by the Mayor Pro Tem. Is there discussion? Without objection, Watson, motion to amend number 1 is adopted. And for the record, Councilmember Harper Madison is joining us virtually, and she is also voting on these items. The next proposed amendment is labeled Item 4, November 20th, 2025, Councilmember Alter, motion 1. Councilmember Alter, you are recognized.
Thank you very much. This was also laid out yesterday. It's having the auditor help us catalog some of our new and prior work on efficiency and then help us get that information to the public. And I move adoption.
Seconded by Councilmember Qadri. Is there discussion? Without objection, Alter Amendment number 1 is adopted. That will now take us to item number 4, November 20th, 2025. Councilmember Alter, motion 2. Councilmember Alter, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Also discussed yesterday, just for us to be able to work with our boards and commissions so that they can help us identify potential priorities and savings moving forward.
It is seconded by, I'll second the motion. Is there any discussion? Without objection, Alter motion to amend number 2 is adopted. All right, members, I don't have any other motions to amend the main motion, but I want to verify that because with all that's going on today, I want to make sure we're clear. Okay, so we've now considered the staff amendments, and that was the original substitute motion. That is now the main. That is the main staff amendment. We've considered the council amendments to the proposed amended budget. So we have a motion and a second, and we're now ready to vote on item number 4, amending the city's adopted city's fiscal year 2025-2026 budget as it's been amended by the staff amendment and by the council amendments. Will the clerk please call the roll so that each council member's vote is recorded?
Mayor Watson?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Fuentes?
Yes.
Councilmember Harper Madison?
Councilmember Harper Madison, you're muted. I'm sorry.
My apologies, Mr. Mayor.
No problem.
Aye.
Thank you.
Councilmember Velasquez?
Aye.
Councilmember Villa?
Yes.
Councilmember Alter?
Yes.
Councilmember Lane?
Yes.
Councilmember Siegel?
Yes.
Councilmember Ellis?
Yes.
Councilmember Caudry?
Yes.
And Councilmember Duchin?
Yes.
There being 11 ayes and 0 nays, the motion to adopt the ordinance amending ordinance number 2025-0813-005 to amend the city's budget for fiscal year 2025 to 2026 as amended is approved on a vote of 11-0.
First time I've been a part of a budget cycle where we've all voted for the budget.
Well, we ought to quit while we're ahead.
I can always change my votes.
Yeah, Councilmember Duchin, yes. I didn't want to look down that direction. All right, members, item 4 is adopted on all 3 readings. So we will now consider item number 5 to ratify the property tax increase reflected in the budget. This is not the vote on amending the tax rate. We will take a separate vote on amending the tax rate after this vote. Is there a motion to ratify the property tax increase reflected in the amended fiscal year 2025-2026 budget adopted by council today? Councilmember Ellis moves adoption. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Lane. Members, we have a motion and a second to ratify the property tax increase reflected in the amended fiscal year 2025-2026 budget. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, without objection, the motion to ratify the property tax increase reflected in the amended fiscal year 2025-2026 budget passes on a vote of 11-0. We will now take up item number 6 to approve an ordinance amending ordinance number 2025-0813-001, by which we adopted and levied a property or ad valorem tax rate for the city of Austin for fiscal year 2025-2026. We are amending that ordinance to align it with the voter approval tax rate, which is what the city's tax rate is reduced to now that Proposition Q did not pass. Members, this will be a roll call vote, and the motion will include language provided by law. I want to note that while this language includes the word increase, that is effectively in reference to last year's tax rate. The amended tax rate in the ordinance we are adopting today is actually a 5-cent decrease per $100 valuation from the tax we adopted in August and that was presented to the voters in Proposition Q. The motion that I will accept is as follows. I move that the property tax rate be increased by the adoption of a tax rate of 0.524017 per $100 valuation, which is effectively an 8.4% increase in the tax rate, and the approval of the ordinance amending ordinance number 2025-0813-001. Is there a motion? Motion is made by Councilmember Ellis. It is seconded by Councilmember Vela. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we have a motion and a second, so I will ask the clerk to please call the roll so that each council member's vote is recorded.
Mayor Watson?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Fuentes?
Yes.
Councilmember Harper Madison?
Councilmember, you're muted. Councilmember Harper Madison, you're muted.
My apologies, Mr. Mayor.
That's right.
I'm an aye.
Yes.
She's an aye.
Councilmember Velasquez?
Aye.
Councilmember Villa?
Yes.
Councilmember Alter?
Yes.
Councilmember Lane?
Yes.
Councilmember Siegel?
Yes.
Councilmember Ellis?
Yes.
Councilmember Caudry?
Yes.
And Councilmember Duchin?
Yes.
The motion to approve the ordinance amending the ordinance adopting a property tax rate passes on a vote of 11-0. Yes. Members, that concludes the three items that we needed to vote to adopt an amendment to the budget following the defeat of Proposition Q. I'm going to ask if you want to speak on the budget, please let me know. Before we do that, I will simply say, and not give a long speech, but I want to say the deepest thanks to our voters, the voters that engaged in this process, the voters that told us, I mean, that's the purpose of a vote, and I said the night we passed this, we originally passed the budget, that it was now time to trust the voters. I believe the budget amendment that we just adopted reveals that we trusted the voters, we heard the voters, and we reacted to the voters. But I want to say thank you to the voters for engaging in the election and for sending the message. I also want to say a deep thanks to the manager and his staff. The financial staff that's sitting here in front of us has done a remarkable job of helping us get to where we need to get today, and we couldn't do this without you, and we know how much work you've put into it. Yes. And I add to that the general staff of this city. Our professional staff is really wonderful, and it works very, very hard and does a lot of things that nobody knows and gets relatively little credit for it most of the time. But even during a budget process like this, where we're trying to sort out what we do to make sure we can provide services well to this very successful city that we live in, the amount of time and energy and emotion and effort that you've put into it, I feel I speak for everybody when I say thank you to all of our city staff for the role you play. And then finally, I'm going to say thank you to the council. There's been a lot of work, and and including tonight, the level of work, the discussion and debate has been very healthy and one that our constituents, I hope, can be proud of. So I want to say a thank you to each member of the council and your level of commitment to this job. With that, I'll recognize the Mayor Pro Tem and then Councilmember Cotton.
Thank you. Colleagues, during this budget process, my North Star was clear: to support public safety and to protect the services that keep Austinites safe, housed, and stable. We prioritized EMS funding to help in staffing shortages because when you're in a crisis, no ambulances should sit empty. We secured a 24/7 mental health crisis response because access to life-saving care should never depend on the time of day. We funded food pantries for our children and seniors in direct response to the longest government shutdown in American history because no one should go hungry due to political gridlock. And we protected our most effective homelessness service programs because our unhoused neighbors deserve stability and a dignified path forward. We know that the tough decisions aren't over, but my commitment remains with the Austinites we represent, the services they depend on the most, and the workers who keep them running. Thank you to every Austinite who made their voice heard, to our dedicated city staff, and to every partner who has helped shape this year's budget. And a special thank you to the District 2 team for their enduring and endless support.
Councilmember Cadre, followed by Councilmembers Ellis and Alter.
Great. Thank you, Mayor. I want to just kind of kick this off with just deep appreciation for everyone who's been a part of this process, everyone who's come to City Hall to speak on the budget, whether it was the first time we did the budget or this time, whether you voted in the TRE election or not, regardless of how you voted on it. But just want to thank everyone for being a part of the process. I think that's what makes Austin so special, is people deeply care about the city and they have such a love for the city. You see that through our constituents, voters. You see that through the staff in front of us. So deep appreciation for city staff for always doing the hard work. Much appreciation to council staff, mayor and council staff. You guys work y'all's tails off. You guys make us look as good as we do. You make Jose look great. You make Ryan look great. You make everyone on this council look so great. I was looking at you too. That's why I went there. But you make me.
He wasn't suggesting it takes extra work.
No, not at all. Not at all. But really, I do so appreciate council staff for all their work that y'all do, and want to thank all my colleagues, whether you were a part of my budget subquorum, the first budget this year or the second, or maybe we weren't a part of any budget subquorum, but. During my almost 3 years on the council, there's often things we all agree on, and at times there's things that we disagree on. But where council always comes together is just once again love for this city, love for this community, and making sure we do right by Austinites. So I think that's what we saw. That's what we've always seen, in my opinion, when it comes to the budget or any item that we bring forward. I think that's what we see when it comes to tonight's budget. And I know this council will continue to love the city and do the work for the city. So thank you all for everything.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Ellis, Councilmember Alter, Councilmember Lane.
I'm really proud of this budget. I know there's a lot more items that if there were a few more dollars that we would absolutely be able to spend in a way that served our public as best possible. But since we were at 3.5%, we said we have to absolutely make the most of this. We have to make as many tough cuts as possible to make sure that we can make each dollar stretch as far as possible. I think this budget reflects something that takes care of our city employees and our first responders, and we're showing up for them the way they always show up for us. So like other folks have said about city staff, no matter how big the task, no matter how long the work day is, we're always here to make sure that we get it done and we get it done responsibly. I'm really proud of the $1 million for wildfire mitigation that we're going to be able to do. I think keeping our public safe from wildfire is one of my highest priorities as I do this work. EMS is getting more money for overtime, and EMCOT is going to be able to produce more hours and make sure that they're available to folks in need when the moment comes. And we also got to do some work for part-time temporary employee benefits. We weren't able to take it as far as we want to, so I just wanted to flag that although we were able to do $120,000 for 84 84 new employees that have been working with the city for 12 months or longer. This is a really important need. The actual cost of being able to do medical and dental for our part-time temporary employee staff is $2 to $3 million. So this is something I'm going to continue to work on as we move through this budget now that it's being implemented. And I really want to make sure that we are leaders in providing the best working environment and the best benefits for our employees. So I'm proud of the work that's been done today, but it won't end here. I know this is a bit of deja vu, getting to do another budget in one year, but I think it's important that we go through this exercise and we really understand what we're up against, and to make sure that we're delivering for the public. So I'm proud of all the work that has gone into this.
Councilmember Alter, followed by Councilmember Lang.
Thank you very much. I just want to start with, this process was very truncated, as we all have experienced, and there are things that we wish we could have explored more, understood better, and tools we wish we had available. And one of those that I just wanted to highlight here for a moment as we look towards our next budget, which is going to be, I believe, equally as difficult, if not potentially more, is we have to bend the cost curve. And we have to do that across our departments, but we have to really look at our public safety departments. And as Chief, there are multiple chiefs back there. Chief Davis in the middle, you talked about some of the reforms y'all are working on. One of the ones I really want us to continue to focus on is within the Barry Dunn report about how we can utilize alternative non-sworn response to help make that service delivery better and potentially at a lower cost. I know you're committed to doing that, but I want to continue that work. I know Councilmember Velasquez has also been working on this, and so through his committee would like to continue moving that forward. But I also want us to, that this experience today didn't certainly happen in a vacuum. As much as we all love being here, I wish we weren't, right? I fought for Prop Q because it wasn't just a policy debate. It was a lifeline for many in our community. Neighbors sleeping on the streets, seniors trying to decide between groceries and prescriptions, families relying on public health workers just for the basics. And it would have let us take better care of our cities, whether that's the parks our kids play in, the trails we walk, the airs we breathe, would have strengthened EMS, strengthened fire, so that when anyone dials 911, that response gets there fast. And that's not politics. That's just the basic promise that we make to our people. Unfortunately, we have just too many people who are hurting, not because of bad luck, but often because of decisions made outside this chamber, whether that's Washington, D.C. or right up the street. And some of those services have just disappeared overnight with the stroke of a pen. And when I talk to these families who are literally at a breaking point, what they have conveyed is, yes, they are tough, but they are incredibly tired. They're maxed out. That even in this squeeze, they do value what the city does, value our first responders, value our workers who keep this city running, but have said you need to do more with less. And so that's why we have spent the time scrubbing every corner of this budget, justifying every use of our dollars, showing our math to the public, and I think our budget staff has done that 3 times over now. But I don't want us to forget that this budget does have consequences. There are real services that we heard about that people depend on that will go unmet. People will fall behind. People will potentially even fall into homelessness. And that's not because they have failed, it's because their community just didn't have the resources to catch them. And that is really concerning. But what is really, I'm excited to see is what we were united on and that was protecting our EMS medics so that we can keep saving lives, holding the line on homeless investments, investing in MCOT so that people suffering from a mental health crisis can get that help they need. And so going forward, we're not just going to talk about trust, we're going to rebuild it brick by brick with dashboards, more community oversight, greater accountability, and it's not going to be easy, it's not going to be fast, and on days like today, it will just hurt. But we owe it to the people of Austin to look them in the eye and say, we honored every single dollar you gave us. We fought for every service we could save, and we never forgot who we work for.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Lane, then Councilmember Duchin.
Thank you. I also want to start by thanking our city staff and, in particular, Budget Office Director Carrie Lang, Deputy Director Eric Nelson, and CFO Ed Banning for your diligence, your long hours of hard work, and making yourselves available to us to answer our questions literally around the clock so that we are able to arrive at consensus as a council and move forward together. I also really want to thank my colleagues in our subquorum and the rest of the dais for being open to collaborating, respecting each other's priorities, and also understanding the sacrifices that we each have to make in order to meet this moment. And finally, I genuinely very much want to thank everyone who has engaged so actively throughout this challenging budget process. Your voices have been an essential part of our collective effort to remain on the right path as a city while navigating significant financial constraints. I am pleased to see that we found a way to fund child victim services across our entire city, including investing our fair share towards the Williamson County Child Advocacy Center. I'm relieved that we are able to fund food insecurity assistance through food pantries at Title I schools and home-delivered meals for our seniors through Meals on Wheels. I'm also grateful that Council coalesced around public safety priorities that include expanding our mental health emergency response, keeping enough ambulances on the road to reach us all, keeping our eyes on additional investments needed to continue improvements across our public safety agencies and in effective collaboration between them. At the same time, we know our work doesn't end here. My priorities remain clear: keeping our community safe, addressing homelessness with solutions that are compassionate and effective, continuing to work and support our city's workers, and optimizing our resources across the board to make our city's operations more efficient, transparent, and responsive while enabling us to continue to invest in accordance with our collective values. Moments like these, unfortunately, are a reminder that when resources are scarce, it really does take all of us, government, nonprofits, schools, and neighbors, working together, coming together, and showing up for every moment. Our hard work will continue, and it will take every single one of us to keep showing up and help us make this city the best place for us all to live in and thrive. Thank you all.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Duchin.
Thank you, Mayor. I know it's been said by everybody here already, but I want to start by just commending our incredible city staff for all of their hard work. I know that everybody here on the dais and really all of our staff are immensely thankful. We've got an incredibly strong team of people to work through this process because city budgets are a complicated thing, and I'm learning every day about how to navigate that. And your impressive expertise and a lot of dedicated work and long hours has made those discussions possible, so thank you. I also want to thank my colleagues on the dais for taking up the city budget again with continued commitment to the city's priorities and concerns. Probably don't need to remind anybody, but I did not vote for the previous budget. I voted no because, not because the programs that I preferred were absent, but because I was uncomfortable how we were meeting this particularly challenging time. My sense was before this year, we wrote a decade of rapid growth, which led to a lot of expansion in our city services. Programs that may not have been needed in the past became vital priorities. And basic services also had to grow very quickly to meet with increasing demand. And we needed to move quickly and often say yes. And we're simply in a different place. We're in a different place than we were back in 2019. We're even in a different place we were 2 years ago. City revenue isn't increasing at a breakneck pace, and many of our services, while strained, are catching up to our needs. And this is a big change for all of us, for our entire city, I believe that this change did afford us, though, this opportunity to discuss priorities, to identify savings, and to take an important stock of what's working and what's not. So I think the passage of the budget this year marked a moment to reset and rebuild. My sense was that Prop Q's failure showed how concerned local residents are when it comes to how we spend money here. And I believe my colleagues and I have taken a first and important step to restoring trust with those constituents. This budget strengthens public safety. It provides first responders with resources they need to protect our neighborhoods and communities. It invests in parks and green spaces that our neighborhoods rely on. It also refocuses money on homelessness initiatives, allowing those programs to work better for the people who need them most. And so now, from my perspective, it's a time to just look ahead. City Hall has got to still work on addressing the structural deficit that keeps our spending under control. Otherwise, we may find ourselves back in the same spot as we were this year. And so I'm grateful that our city manager and other staffers have begun to already identify areas where we can conserve funds. And I look forward to expanding that effort with an audit or other studies that look hard at each and every public dollar and expense. It's our job to set up Austin for success over the next decade, and that won't be possible unless we continue to put this financial house in order. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. I'm checking on one thing before we adjourn, but I need to get somebody's attention. Members, if y'all just hang on one, please come up here. Hang on 1 second while I double check one thing. So when you go through this kind of process and you have as much change as we've had, I sat here and I want to be clear with my colleagues. I was listening to everything you had to say, but I got myself worked up about worrying about something. I just wanted to double check it. So everything's cool. I wouldn't have been able to sleep tonight if I hadn't checked on that. The last thing I want to do is I want to say a special kind of thanks to Eric Nelson, who tomorrow at 10 o'clock or shortly thereafter, I'm not going to, but sometime in the morning, he's going to become a new father. And so that's the real reason we're getting done tonight. But we want to say congratulations. We pray everything goes beautifully, and tomorrow night you're as tired as you are right now. Members, we got nothing else to talk about unless you all just want to talk. With that being said, thanks again to everybody. Thank you all. Without objection, this regular call meeting of the Austin City Council is adjourned at 9:17 p.m. Thank you, Councilmember Harper Madison, for sticking there with us.
Did it.
Thank you, man.